I'm still seeing that we're hosting SFAT.
I love that spot.
There we go. And we are live. So let's get into this. Hello, everybody. This is it. This is the very first episode of the new podcast brought to you by twitch.tv/melee every day. We've got world record, or world record rather. Such a good name, and I butchered it already. But my name is Zetz. I'm a Melee commentator, and I'm joined by two other awesome individuals. And the topic of the very first podcast of this iteration of podcasts is going to be mental health, something that hits home for me and, of course, everybody else that's going to be joining me, and hopefully a lot of you guys at home. So for anybody that's joining us, thank you very much. I guess I'll pass it over to both of my co-podcasters here to introduce yourselves. Can you guys tell us a bit about who you are and why does this topic resonate with you? I guess we'll start with Louis.
Hey, my name is Louis Limas. Been a competitor in the scene for a long time now, specifically with Melee. Tournament organizer previously for the Full Bloom series, and now I've been doing a mental coaching thing through a little thing I call metagame. Mental health is a huge part of what I do. I went to school to study mental health. I received a PhD in counseling psychology from Indiana University, and so I thought, what a great way to bridge my interests with and passion for gaming and esports and my expertise in education with mental health. And so I'm just trying in different ways, different avenues to bridge those two ways, those two interests. And so I'm glad to kind of be on this podcast to talk about it a little bit more.
Awesome. Welcome. And we also have Winston Zhu with VG Bootcamp. So who are you?
Hello. I'm Winston Joe. Sorry, I should have said that earlier, not to put you on the spot. So I'm Winston. I'm a photographer. I'm not gonna say I'm an esports photographer because I think a lot of people want to hop on that wagon. Anyways, I'm not gonna go deeper into that. But anyways, I'm a photographer. I work primarily in weddings and other things of that nature, but I do shoot esports events. I've been with VG Bootcamp for about a year or so. Work with them doing live stream, Genesis Pound, things of that fun nature. I think mental health has been a huge part of my life, just in particular with regards to working as someone that's freelance and someone that needs to manage both their own schedules, but also, figure out a way to balance how to take care of yourself, but also, get your job done. But that's just me. We'll just get on. Yeah.
I honestly thank you for introducing yourself. I think that's brilliant because one of the things that I think we're all going to have in common, a lot of the viewers at home are going to have in common with, is a lot of us, we're creatives. We want to kind of find a way to make our passion our career, and that's a very, very difficult thing to do. It takes a lot of different skills. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of industriousness, a lot of conscientiousness. And those are things that creative people might not always be particularly good at. You might be really good at music or photography, but you might not have all the other skills you need to make it. I think that mental health in that way is really important, but it's difficult. I think those are kind of some of the struggles that a lot of people deal with. So Winston, could you maybe talk a bit more about your specific challenges and difficulties in trying to become a photographer, and how you feel mental health has played a role in all?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the only context that I should really give is that while I do shoot esports, it's something that I really love to shoot. I think my primary path right now is weddings, and so I think that should give a bit more context into what I'm gonna say. So I think with regards to being a creative, being a photographer, and dealing with mental health issues while doing that, specifically in the realm of shooting weddings, for me, every time I go to work, I'm dealing with people that are both the most stressed they have been in a long time, but also probably the happiest they'll be in a long time. And so I think just being around people that are having one of the best days of their life every single day that I'm working, while also potentially going through something on my own, can be really, I don't know, it's a weird thing, being a sad boy. Actually, let me not say that. I hate that so much. But you
Too
know,
late.
like struggling with something, right? But being surrounded and needing to put up some kind of like facade so that you can be professional and get your job done, right? And so I think for me, something that's helped but also like been a challenge is learning to compartmentalize and partition like work from your personal stuff, but also not going too far with it. If that makes sense. Like, I guess figuring out how far you need to go to make sure you get your stuff done, but also pay attention to your own needs, your own limits, either like mentally, physically, or whatever, and like what specific situations can be like triggering or detrimental to your mental well-being. Um, I know I kind of just like went off. Does that answer, the question?
Yeah, I think the idea of compartmentalizing. I think that's really big in social work. I used to date a social worker who would talk a lot about being able to not bring your work home with you. And what I'm interested in is, especially for people like I work in the service industry. Do you feel the need when you're being at a wedding and photographing? Photographing is not a word, but we're gonna
It's a word now. It's a word now.
now it is on twitch.tv/melee every day. Throw us a follow.
Thank you,
Do you feel the need to kind of be on, like you have to like put on a face and you have to be like on your A game? That's got to be difficult if maybe you're anxious that day or you have a lot of other things going on. What kind of things have worked for you to be able to kind of execute and do your job even when there's outside factors that are making it more difficult?
Uh, it's actually really interesting we're talking about like this specific thing because there was a thing. One of my friends, shout out to Kate Ann Photo if you want to look her up. She's really good. But there was something that she shared from like one of her friends. Anyways, basically, I think in the specific context of weddings, and I'll get to esports right after this, but like in the specific context of weddings, I think it's important that we understand like the position and like the honor of the position that we've been given to like be with these people on this special occasion, right? And so I think making it clear to myself, like just like telling myself in my head, like you can fake it if you have to for the 8, 10, 12 hours that you've been booked, and then afterwards like do whatever self-care you need to, but like while you're there just like focus on that one thing, don't worry about the other stuff, like focus on doing your job well and treating your clients as good as you possibly can. And so I think with regards to doing esports, uh I guess it's hard, like it's different because it's not like a happy occasion per se, like people are there to compete, it's high stress, but I think like if you're able to focus your mind on a single thing, like keep things simple. There's a DJ I've been like absolutely obsessed with, Kenny Beats. But like one of his mottos is like dots, like don't overthink shit. Like if you're gonna apply this to esports, just like don't overthink it. Like focus on one thing. And then if you wanna focus on winning, focus on improving your tech skill or whatever, and then get your self care in afterwards, then like I guess that's something that could be good, could be helpful.
Yeah, keep it simple, stupid, right?
Yes.
Louis, do you have anything to add or any follow-up questions here?
Oh, I think I heard were really good strategies, and I think for different people, it can be different in terms of what works for them. So for some people, I talk to them, and I think compartmentalizing is good. And I think for some people, I think Winston said it well. Is you're doing that with a sense of balance, so that when you are compartmentalizing, you are looking within yourself to make sure that it doesn't turn into avoidance. It doesn't turn into a lack of moving forward with your life, or anxiety that is out of control. And so you are making sure that if I'm compartmentalizing something, that I am acknowledging that I've maybe thought about it, I've tried to deal with it, but now I have determined that the best way to kind of deal with this particular specific type of stress or anxiety or worry is to kind of put it into a box and put it off to the side. What I think is also important now to go on the other end of it is just to make sure that you are kind of doing the self introspection of determining if compartmentalizing in that truest sense is good for you. Because I think essentially some people go forward with this initial idea of like, I'm just going to push it away. And I think what that happens for some people is that it will show up later, but in different aspects of their life. So one quick example would just be, I'm going to compartmentalize, or I'm going to push away a certain stressor that's in my life. And then what I hear sometimes is I start to wake up with muscle aches or headaches or physical pain. And then I talk to people and I find out that they've been dealing with this stressor that's been existing, or has been occurring, but they haven't really dealt with it in a healthier way. So just being mindful of the difference between compartmentalizing and avoiding, I think, is really important.
I love that. Um, I have a few follow-up questions, and a lot of them have to do with some of the topics we have on the chopping block, if you will, for tonight. We're going to be talking a little bit about, of course, depression, about lifestyle, about managing stress. You've talked a lot about compartmentalization and about balance, and this is actually something that I'm starting to struggle with. I guess I'll give myself a slightly I'll just spend a bit of time introducing myself. So far, I've told you guys I'm a Melee commentator. I'm sure a lot of the people watching, I see some of you guys in the chat saying hi. Thank you guys for tuning in. I've been in the scene for about 6 years. I started joining around 2013, and that was like right in the middle of college for me. I started college in 2011, and I never really knew why I went. When I was in high school, I really wanted to play music, but I went to college because that's what you're supposed to do, right? That's what my mom always wanted me to do. She told me I was going. So I went to college not really knowing why I was there. I literally ended up changing my major like 7 times. And that's not a hyperbole. That's actually the number of times I changed my major. I just kept trying to find something. But what I ended up learning in the end is that I was searching for something even though I already found what I really loved. I really loved music. So I ended up putting myself in this position, this situation where I had like this mounting student debt, and I was like 2-3 years in college, but I had like credits dispersed across the major, so I wasn't super close to graduating. So I got to a kind of a dark place for a while. That was right around the time actually that I fell in love with Melee. So Melee was a huge form of escape from a lot of my real problems. I was like skipping class to play this game, so I found something I really loved. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people that can relate to that. But ultimately, I've had a lot of ups and downs. Melee has been a lot of what helped me bring myself out of a darker place, along with other things. I'd love to revisit that later. But here's where I am now. I've been playing and commentating for about 6 years. All of that time really paid off a few months ago at Smash and Splash. I got to commentate at a major for the first time. I got top 64 at a major for the first time. It was like the best weekend of my life. And it inspired me, like reinvigorated the spirit inside of me, wanting to do more. So I've been trying to grind. I've been trying to make content, trying to go to more majors, stuff like that, and things are going well. But now what I'm struggling with is trying to balance this full-time job I have to sustain myself with trying to build a new like esports life, maybe one day career on top of that. So some of the things I've been trying to do, I get home at like 6:30 because I work from like 9:30 to 6. And I give myself like at least a half hour. Like I get home at 6:30 until 7, I can do whatever I want. If I want to like just, go on the internet and look at Reddit for a while, that's fine. If I want to watch YouTube videos, that's fine. I can play guitar. But I give myself a little bit of time to like just kind of unwind, relax. Yet still, I feel like I'm not able to be as productive as I want. I'm not making as many videos as I want. I want to be doing like one a week, and that like doesn't happen. So I guess it's a question for you two. How do you guys find the ability to balance all the different things you're doing in your life? You have maybe a significant other. Maybe you are, you have a full-time job, or you're trying to make you're an entrepreneur. You're trying to make your own career. What do you guys do? What do you think?
Winston, since you've been doing the photography for a while now.
God, I was gonna say like let's bring it on over to you, Louis. All right, I can answer. Putting me on a spot. I'm so scared. I think it's funny that you're asking me, half because like I'm stuck here. I have to answer, but also I'm really bad at balance. I think some of my friends have called me like a bit of a workaholic, but I think something. So like I graduated in May, right? And so I think now that I'm not chained by an institution of education, I have to go about figuring out what does post-grad life look like, what does post-grad life working as a freelance photographer look like. And I think balance for me is just either setting up constraints, like if I need to get things done, just like set up like random constraints, right? Like you only have one day to edit this album, You
Like
have to hit this album, yeah, like deadlines, right? And I know that like it works for me, it might not work for everyone, but for me, doing things like that tends to help if I just need to like get content out, because like you can't have the perfect content come out every single time. Like you need a whole ass team for that. That's just impossible to do on your own. Um, and so setting up deadlines like that, or just being okay with the fact that like you're just not going to be able to do as much as you want, and like sometimes that's fine. I don't know. I'm bad at it, but I think as long as you're patient with yourself, like patience and diligence, I feel will just bring you far, with regards to like long-term personal growth goals like this.
Hmm. I think that's well said. I like that last part of what you said too, of acknowledging yourself, what you can do, and your limits. So for me, a type A person, so I am the person who likes to block out my schedule and see how I can do things effectively. I also like to think I have too many hobbies, so I definitely struggle with the idea of like how do I manage everything. For me though, I'll answer it first by just kind of saying a few things, or I guess one general thing. Before you even get into all the things that you want to do, I think we is it overstate, or I think we understate or underplan, whatever you want to way you want to put it, all the health behaviors that should always take precedence first. And so for me, it's like I think it's four things I break down, and it's 8 to 9 hours of sleep. Don't sacrifice that. Eating enough food and healthier food, exercise, and then social engagement or being with people. So let's make sure that we're doing those things first, and then now schedule what other things you want to do with your life, your goals around those things. But I think too often we think, what can I jam pack into my day? And at the sacrifice of sleeping, eating, exercise, and being around people. So I know that's kind of like an indirect way of saying it, but I say, to me, before we even say how do I manage all these other things that I want to do the things that you should do first. And then you'll realize how much energy and how much motivation you'll have for those other things first. But I think people try to do the six other things first, like player, trying to work full-time job, trying to go to school full-time, trying to look for a relationship, 5 hours a night. They don't get enough to eat. And what they do eat is trash. They don't exercise. And they tell me they feel tired, lethargic. And so you're not going to accomplish the things that you want to do because you're not doing the things you ought to do.
Man, that resonates so hard. I'm definitely guilty of not getting enough sleep. Sometimes I'll justify staying up late to finish a project, but really you're just sacrificing the energy that you won't have the next day. I don't like eat well enough. I'm not exercising enough. And there have been periods of my life where I have hit on some or maybe even all of those check marks. And the difference in terms of like overall awareness, energy level, it's just staggering. But it just sucks because it feels like a sacrifice. It feels like, okay, if I'm getting 8 hours of sleep, I work 8 hours a day. It takes me a half hour to get to work, half hour to get home.
Yeah.
Eating meals, that takes time. So now it's like, how much time do I even have on a weekday? It's like maybe like 3 or 4 hours. And that's if I'm not prepared to sacrifice for anything else. So now you're doing all these things to have 4 hyper productive hours. And I can't watch any Netflix. But that's the lifestyle you sign up for if you want to be an entrepreneur, I think.
Yeah. And I think when you're able to kind of regiment for yourself that's based around those things first, I think what will happen inevitably, well, maybe not inevitably, I think it will become a little bit easier to iron out, okay, I recognize what's important to me, like health wise. So now what else do I really want to devote those last 3 or 4 hours during a weekday? Maybe you realize, okay, the 6 things that I want to do, I realize they're not all 6 of them are as important, and maybe I do want to focus my 3 to 4 hours on photography or my commentary or being a pro player. And I think where you place your time, it becomes clearer to you.
Yeah, I love that we're on this topic of lifestyle. I think that there's a lot of people out there that could really benefit from improving their lifestyle, but in many cases, it's easier said than done. So I want to talk a bit about some things I've seen success with in terms of building lifestyle, and then hear from you guys if you think that these are good ideas or what's worked for you. I think where a lot of people make a mistake in this regard is they have a vision of the perfect life, and maybe they're a type A person like Louis, unlike me. I'm not type A at all, but maybe they're like, all right, I'm gonna figure out exactly what I want my life to be. I want to schedule it out. I'm gonna wake up at 6 a.m. and then I'm gonna meditate for 30 minutes, and then I'm gonna work out, and then I'm gonna get home and make a whole breakfast, and then I'm gonna go to work. Then I get home, and then I'm gonna read a whole book, and inevitably, you can't go from 0 to 100, right? You can't wake up
Yeah.
tomorrow and be the person you want to be. So to me, I found way more success like kind of having like a rank order or a hierarchy, if you will, of the habits I want to build. Focus on one at a time. It's like this week I'm gonna get 8 hours of sleep every day. Next week I'm still gonna do that, but I'm gonna build and then I'm gonna exercise 3 times a week. So I've seen a lot of success with that. What do you guys think about that general model for building a lifestyle worth living?
Yeah.
Louis, you want to go?
Sure. I think it's great. And I think we often find ourselves experiencing anxiety that is stemming from uncertainty and living in the abstract. So thinking about all these things I want to do, but not knowing where to start. And the initial first step is the part that it seems most difficult, or like I want to be, I'm going back to the commentary example, because I think there's a lot of people who want to do that. And since obviously that's something you're doing actively, is it's like, I want to be a top tier commentator. That idea in itself is so abstract when you really think about it. And so what are the steps to get there? Especially in esports, it's not clear. Or even, with Winston, I want to be a top tier photographer. Well, how do we get from point A to point B? And I think what happens is, for people, is thinking about all the steps in between is anxiety provoking. And so I think the structure is what helps. I think what you said, Zet, is perfect. But I think people struggle with the steps that are in the middle. And I could say a few things about that. I think one of the things that comes to mind is this idea of setting incremental goals that are tangible, that are specific, that are reachable, and that there's some level of accountability to. And when we're able to set smaller goals on the journey towards being a pro player, photographer, commentator, we find more success in ourselves, which builds motivation, which builds confidence, and it makes us feel like we're actually actively moving towards something without feeling overwhelmed by just this idea of, how do I become a top tier commentator? So I think you're right, is recognizing it takes time, recognizing it takes incremental goals, and to not just overwhelm yourself with the idea of the end. Pride and taking confidence in the understanding that this week I have no idea what it's like to be a top commentator. Work on my what I say, or I'm gonna watch videos this week, and then by the end of the 3 months, I hope to be at a major. Whatever. That is a lot more doable and a lot more of a confidence booster than just thinking, you're right, like I got to do all of these things today, and that is overwhelming, and you will set yourself up for failure if you think about it that way.
I have a really important follow-up question. I want to kind of direct the discussion in a certain way, but first I want to hear from Winston.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'll keep it fast then, since you got something to do.
No. Take your time. Take as much time as you want. I'm really excited about the next particular topic.
I can keep this here 5-6 hours. Again, no. So I think, no, definitely what Louis said. No, you're right. You're right though. I think there was a video I saw. I don't mean to like keep drawing out like external references, but I guess like that's just how my brain works, right? Like I just soak in things. Anyways, Matt Diavella, I don't know if you guys know him, but he does videos and miscellaneous things on YouTube, right? But basically, like there was a video that he put out about like making lifestyle changes, but also just from general basic psych classes I've taken. I don't have a PhD though. I'm sorry. But I guess like the knowledge that's been in my head is that it takes about 30 days to set up like just a baseline habit. But if you just keep doing something for 30 days, then like eventually it kind of becomes like a loose thing that you don't have to think too hard about. And after that point, you can just add something. And if you just keep doing that, after a year, you have 12 new things that you can just do, right? And you don't have to like expend extra energy towards. And so like what I did in June was I was like, all right, I'm just gonna sleep 8 hours every night. Like I don't care if I got work or like someone's calling me. Like they can call me in the morning. I'm gonna get my 8 hours. Um, and I think just like being slow and being intentional, but keyword being slow, uh,
Mhm.
with the changes that I'm trying to make, the additions to my life that I'm trying to do have been much more like effective,
Mm.
than trying to be like, all right, like I'm gonna hit the gym at 5 a.m. and like I'm gonna be so swole by February. Like every time I try to do that, I just burn out in a week. And I'm just fuck,
Right.
man. Like I don't want to do this. So I think just like doing everything slow, giving yourself about 30 days. At least that's for me, right? Different
Mhm.
Right.
strokes for different folks.
Right.
But being intentional and slow with it has been that
Winston, thank you.
able.
And thank you to Dude in Frames for a raid of 38 viewers. Thank you so much. That's awesome. And for everybody who's just joining us, this is the first episode of a new podcast on Melee Every Day. This is called World Record. And you guys all know Juna, or if you don't, he is the stream manager for Melee Every Day. He's playing some Super Mario 64. We've got a topic, and we're talking about mental health. We've been talking a little bit about habit forming, lifestyle. And one thing I want to talk about, because for the past 20 or so minutes, one thing we've been discussing is building habits that help you acquire or achieve a goal that's meaningful to you. And that's a very, very important aspect of this. But I think a lot of people aren't quite that far in the journey of mental health. Some people are in a darker place. Some people are dealing with deep bouts of depression. And maybe some people, they have a goal, but they don't really believe that they can accomplish it. Or there's so many obstacles between them and the goal that it feels insurmountable. It feels like it's almost not even worth trying to attain. And I know I definitely have been in a place like that. I don't know if you two have ever been in a place like that. I think a lot of people have. But I guess I'm more than happy to open it up, but I also want to give you guys the opportunity to talk a bit about your own experiences in a dark place, because I think that we need to destigmatize this. I think we've done a good job as a society in the past like decade of moving the stigma away from mental health. People like us were comfortable talking about these things. Like I've seen a therapist, it changed my life, and I would encourage anybody else to do it. But I'd love to share my own story. Would either of you guys like to start if you guys have anything to share in that regard? Because I think that's a really important thing to dive in, is just being very authentic and vulnerable about our depression and talk about how we were able to push past that, because I think that can be inspiring to a lot of people.
Completely agree. I think it's inspiring. We vicariously learn from each other, from each other's experiences. Um, is I want to hear from you all, just because I don't want to presume that one has some story, so I'm not going to reach for one. I don't think I've ever experienced what I would consider true depression, and I'm grateful for that. And so I have respect for the people who have gone through it. I've definitely had my hard times, but I want to hear from you guys who've actually had to suffer, unfortunately, through something like this.
I do have a lot to say, but Winston, would you like to start us off, or do you want me to?
Yeah, sure. All right, I guess. Let's see. You know, if I was smart, I would have like prepared, but I'm a dumbass. All right. So I think the Reader's Digest rundown of my experience with depression is, I think it really just started with, I think what a lot of kids go through is just, stress that they have put on either by their parents or by their friends around them, or just themselves, to do well in school, go to college, get some well-paying job, move out to New York or something like that. I think it really just started with a lot of things like that. Um, but then over the years, like I realized, like I don't want to be doing things like that. Like that lifestyle is, it's only it's only appealing in concept, in the sense that I can fit in well with other people, like I can live up to parents' expectations or things of that nature, right? But I think like the further along I got in my education, because like I went to school, and initially when I went, I was pre-dental, so like biology pre-dental. I was gonna be an orthodontist and meddle around in people's mouths, stick metal things in there. But then I think there is this like one point where it was like second semester junior year. I was doing course reg, and like I looked at orgo, like organic chemistry, at the course registration, and just like looking at it gave me a black eye. I'm just like, nah, man, like, I can't do this. And so I just switched. I switched from that to photography, and I was like, you know, if I'm gonna be spending all this money, like doing all this and putting all this effort into just getting a degree, then like I feel like I should be doing something that I can either get behind or something that can put me on a better track, right? And so I just switched to that. But then I guess like a different thing that popped up that I didn't expect from choosing the path that I wanted. Like I thought that like, you know, once I switched to photo, everything would be nice. Like I'd work hard and like I'd shoot cool people and like make money, make some money, starving artist. But like I think a new issue that popped up was I think a lot of photographers, and I can't speak for everyone, but there's this like unspoken infatuation with like intense emotions and really like, you know, being effective at storytelling through really like deep and passionate and very like visceral storytelling. And most of those are through, you know, talking to people, listening to their stories and listening to like how they feel about things and trying to convey that through photographs, right? And so I think the more I got into it, the more fascinated I was with just like meeting people and listening to what they had to say. But something that I didn't expect was I think it became really hard for me to understand when I was either being empathetic or just listening to them. And so like there came a point where I'm just like, you know, I don't know if I'm happy or upset or whatever, or if I'm kind of just like mirroring the story that the last person that I talked to was, right? And just figuring out like where I'm at, who I really want to be, while I'm meeting all these people, listening to all these different stories. Um, and so I think for me, that's been a good and fun experience, I guess. Just like in terms of figuring out what kind of person I am in the midst of, you know, all these extra personalities and stories. There's some other stuff in there that pertains to being like a second generation kid. Um, this isn't obviously applicable to everyone, but I guess like if you have parents that immigrated here, I'm sure that your upbringing might have been a bit different from someone that was either just like born here or their parents didn't immigrate or something like that. And so I think just like stacking that on top of, you know, personal stresses and really trying to figure out like what my identity is,
Mhm.
uh, it's been really hard. It's
Mm.
been really challenging, but I think at the same time, I'm not gonna say like I wouldn't trade it for anything else. Like if I didn't have to go through this, like hell yeah, like get this shit away from me, man.
Mhm.
Like I don't want it.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I will say that it has been very good in terms of like character development and what's the word? Uh, grit formation. Let me say that. Or like fond, like on the bottom of my pan. Like you know, if you're caramelizing onions, like you got fond on the bottom, but like it takes time to form that. Does that make sense?
That's
Yeah.
a nice visualization.
Yeah, like it takes
Really
time.
paint
It's
the
kind of
picture.
yeah, like it takes so long, and like I hate waiting for fond to form. But like,
But when it does,
but when it does, like I think it'll be good. But that's me.
wow, man.
If that doesn't track, let me know. But
Thank you for
that's
sharing. Juan.
you know that's that overview.
So you've definitely been through a lot of very like unique challenges. You know, not everybody is in the photography community. Not everybody's a second generation American, but you know, a lot of people are. And I thank you for sharing those things. Um, could you summarize like what have been some of the main takeaways for you? What do you feel like you've learned from a lot of these experiences? Because you've hinted at, oh, like you feel like it's developed your character, your grit. You feel like you've learned a lot about yourself. I guess what have you learned about yourself, and what advice would you give other creatives that might be dealing with some similar things?
I think specifically to creatives, I think actually let me talk about like what I learned and then I'll do the other thing. So I
Okay.
think something I learned for me is I'm actually hella opinionated, and it's not something that like I used to kind of like try to like avoid that, right? Because like for me, I used to think that people that were really like loud with their words, people that really just like to get what they were feeling out there, either had like something going on or they're like that, right? And I used to think that was kind of a bad thing, that just letting people know that you're sad was kind of like some kind of weakness. But um, I think the best thing that I've learned is just like, if you're mad, just like let someone know you're mad, man. Like it's fine. You don't have to, like, the idea that people have their lives together is literally, it's all a facade. Like it's a waste of time. Um, and like loosely tying into like working as freelance, like you only have so much energy to do things. And I realized like I don't want to put more energy into maintaining this image that like I'm really happy and I'm not like a sour motherfucker, you know? Um, like I'll just be salty. Like it's fine. I'll be professional, but like I'll just let myself be salty. And I think that's one of just like the best things that I've learned. Like I met a bunch of people in school that were just like they are grandpas, like they are old men, and they're not abrasive, but I think just like making friends while doing my best to be authentic has been just a really invaluable learning experience for me. And so I think applying that to other creatives, also doing your best to give yourself that same grace of like being patient and learning what it is that you want to be, learning what it is that you need, in the midst of, you know, whatever it is that you're going through. Because like what you think you need isn't always what you always need, right? Um, I don't know. Like I'm just gonna echo back to like what I said like 3 hours ago. Just like be patient with yourself, man. Like depression's hard. Just give yourself time.
It is.
Yeah, I like
Um,
telling somebody. I was just gonna say, telling somebody besides Twitter.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
I said that I like what Winston said about just telling somebody that you're upset about something, like just
Yeah.
venting.
That's huge. I want to talk a little bit about that really quickly because that hits really close to home for me. Anybody in here that has met me or seen me at a tournament has probably seen me get very salty when losing, mostly because I'm mad at myself. But what's helped me a lot in just dealing and interacting with people in those moments is if somebody doesn't realize I'm upset, which it's written on my face when I'm upset. So if you have, if you can see my face before you attempt to interact with me, or if you have any social awareness, you probably can tell, okay, gives that his space. But if people aren't giving me the space I want, I've literally just started saying, I'm really upset, please give me some space. And people really respect that and they're like, okay, cool. And they do. And then I don't have to like interact with somebody in a place and time where I don't feel capable of having a productive or healthy interaction with somebody. So I think just being very upfront about like your boundaries or your emotions, I think it's a very, very important skill to have, but not necessarily one that everybody pays attention to. By the way, Louis, I think that you were gonna make a joke about like, hey, what do you have to say about old people? That said, you look way younger than anybody that should have a PhD. I will say that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Take that. I'll take that and I'll run with it a little bit. So
Please do.
Winston, thank you again for sharing your story. Build off of the kind of what Zet said and what you said, Winston, and what Juno alluded to, because I think it's let's hit it for the fourth time, and because I don't think people hear this enough, so let's hit it for the fourth time, and let's make it very clear. Not that you guys didn't make it clear, but let's just say it again: is tell people how you feel. Okay, it takes more energy, whether you think it or not. Okay, I'm going to restate it again. It takes more energy to hold back what you're truly feeling. Okay, and it's taxing you mentally because of so many ifs and what if of situations that you are catastrophizing in your mind of what might happen if I tell someone how I feel. For example, if I tell somebody I'm upset at me, they're not going to be able to handle it. They're not going to be my friend anymore. They're going to go talk crap to my other friends and no one's going to like me anymore. Some of you maybe who are listening to this have thought that. Or I'm sad. I don't want to tell somebody I'm sad because there's this vision I have in my head of somebody who is sad and nobody wants to be around that person. So I'm going to fake it. I'm going to pretend like I'm okay. Well, what you're doing is you're catastrophizing a situation. So you're avoiding you're avoiding a lot of things. First off, you're avoiding giving your friends and the people around you the autonomy to make that decision for themselves. So you are distancing yourself from the people around you who are your friends. And if they're your friends, part of the connection and the unsaid thing that goes on when we have friends is that we trust and we love each other and we care about each other. And you're removing the opportunity for somebody to do that for you. So allow them the opportunity to care for you and love you and listen to you. Give them the autonomy to make that decision. And here's the great thing. Even if somebody says, hey, I don't have time right now, or you know what, I hear you, but I'm busy, that's okay too, though. Because it doesn't mean that they don't like you. It doesn't mean that they don't want to listen to you. It just means that they're busy. And it means just that. Because everyone's busy. And I think what we tell ourselves is that we catastrophize the situation, and for what we are concerned might happen, we think that we can't handle it. But the reality is we can, but we're never allowing ourselves to experience that because we avoid it altogether. So we live in a world where we are only showing a little bit of ourselves and how we feel to the people around us. So we distance ourselves from other people. And here's the insidious part, is that we're all doing it. And so we're all keeping each other at arm's length, and we do it in so many different ways. And one of the most insidious ways we do it is on social media.
Wow. So many truth bombs there. I couldn't agree with everything you said more.
I was nodding with so much of that.
Okay. So much of that resonated with me. I was actually about to bring this up before you did. Like the flip side of tell people how you feel. We started with Winston saying tell people when you're upset, and now Louis bringing up tell people when you're sad or when you're depressed. God. Okay, so I'm sure there's people in the chat that are just like me. When I get depressed, I become a recluse. I close everything off, and a lot of it is shame. There's so much shame there because it's like a lot of my depression is when I have problems that I'm not dealing with. I have problems, I either can't or am not dealing with them. I'm escaping from them because I have a lot of anxiety. So I'm trying to manage my own mental health, but I'm not doing it in productive ways. Maybe I'm using substances. Maybe I'm skipping my classes to play video games from 2001. Maybe I'm watching YouTube videos and not having a sleep schedule. I can't get out of bed. And there's so much shame with knowing that I could be doing things to make my situation better, but I'm not. So it's like, what do I even have to tell anybody? It's like, and these are not the correct things to be thinking, but this is how I would think in those spots. I would think, okay, I'm really depressed. I'm not doing anything to better my life. Why even tell my friend? It's like, what are they going to do? Like, I don't even want to burden them. That's where it was coming from for me, is I felt like I would just be burdening them with like all of my negativity, and I would just be dragging them down. And it felt like I wasn't worthy of help. It's like, well, like I wouldn't even burden them. And then I've been in situations where my friends are calling me because they haven't heard from me for so long. I would ignore the phone call. I wouldn't return their texts. It's because I was so ashamed of myself and how I was living my life and how I wasn't doing anything to make it better and who I was, that I couldn't bear to speak to anybody. And that's a very, very dark place to be. So with your guys' blessing, I'd like to just kind of give you guys the Reader's Digest bullet point version of my story, because there's so many things that are, I think, so important here. I think I've learned a lot. I've taken a lot of takeaways, and I guess like I'll give you guys the good news. The end of the story is that the past couple months of my life have been the best months of my life. I feel like I've really put together a lot of things recently, and that's why I was so excited for this podcast, because I'm hoping that there's people out there listening right now that are, well, I guess I don't hope that any of you are in a dark place, but I suspect that some of you are. So I hope that you guys will listen, and I'm just going to be vulnerable with you guys. So I already set this up earlier, but for anybody that just joined, basically, I went to college. I didn't know why I wanted to go. My mom, like, she had me when she was really, really young, like when she was like 18. So she put herself through college while raising me, and her worldview was, I have to go to college so I can have an easier life than her, and that makes total sense. But the problem is, I'm a creative. I loved, like, in high school, all I did was music. I had a band in high school. I loved playing music so much. All I ever dreamed of was being in a band. And if you want to make that your life, don't go to college unless it's paid for, because then you're going to have all this debt, and debt is not what you want if you're a creative, because you're not making money in the first place. You cannot afford to have debt. But I didn't understand all these things. So I go to college. I literally had 7 different majors. I kept switching because I kept trying to find something, when really I knew what I wanted to do all along. One of the big takeaways is going to be that for creatives, you have to accept what you're passionate about and just accept the risk associated with going for it. In my opinion, that is what you have to do, because if not, you're going to be miserable. I think you all know, we all probably know older people that they always talk about what they really liked to do, and they have this hobby that they have their 9-to-5 job, and they can't wait until they can go bowling one day a week because they never went all in. Well, this was tearing me apart in college because I wasn't able to go all in on music, and then I fell in love with Melee, and I wanted to go all in on Melee, but I felt like, well, I can't do that. Like that's so risky. Like it'll never happen. I'll never be able to be good enough to make Melee my life. So I never gave myself permission to embrace what I was truly passionate about. I kept trying to find like a stable career, but like I'm the kind of person that life just isn't for me. Well, I find myself like junior year of college. I have like no direction. I have no goals really because I won't accept the goals I really want. I'm trying to find a major. It's not working out. Eventually I'm skipping classes because I cannot bear to go anymore. And now I'm literally skipping classes. Like I've never done that in my life. It's like a new low. I'm like sleeping through my classes, and I'm developing terrible sleeping habits. I'm getting to this really, really dark place where I'm like literally flunking out of college. And I have like this mounting student loan debt, and now I have no actual realistic way to pay for it all. And at the same time, it's like I'm not giving myself permission to like pursue the things that are meaningful in my life. So what am I really living for? I have all these huge problems, and I have no like real escape. And there were some really dark moments. Like I don't think I was ever truly suicidal in the sense that I was planning it, but I was actually thinking about it. And that's a really, really dark place to be. But I'm happy to share with you guys that I'm very, very far away from that place. And I'm just sharing this because I want people to be comfortable sharing those kinds of things. The turning point for me, there was about two main things that happened for me. One is I had a friend that was so close to that I was willing to share all these things, and they were truly there for me. And I will never, my good friend Evan, and there were so many other people, but he was the person I was closest to in these darkest times. And you truly need a loved one that you can share absolutely everything with. I think everybody needs at least one person like that, because if there's some things in your life that you can't share with anybody else, that's not a good place to be. He was the one that encouraged me to seek professional help. And I saw a psychologist, and there were so many things I unpacked from my childhood that I linked to behaviors that I had and aspects of my personality that we just don't have time for. But that was huge for me. I ended up talking to my mom, and I opened up to my mom about this, and we're going back to being honest with people. I don't know why, but I expected my mom to be ashamed of me or disappointed in me for being depressed and skipping classes, and that's a lot of why I dreaded that conversation so much. Another key theme here is the thing you most dread doing, the conversation you most don't want to have, the time where you most can't bring yourself to check your bank account. Those are the times where you most need to do those things. And you have no idea how much better you'll actually feel when you do that thing, because that's the truth. You have that conversation with your mom, and my mom was so supportive. It made things so much easier. The world was lifted off of my shoulders when I told my mom, I'm depressed, I'm skipping classes, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, I'm seeing a psychologist, I'm trying to piece it together. Hearing her be supportive and not disappointed was the beginning of, it was a 180 for me. The other thing, aside from like being honest with people, being honest with like a psychologist, being honest with my mom, was I got a new part-time job at this call center. And I was working at Ohio State. Basically what we were doing is we would call alumni of Ohio State, and we would ask them over the phone for donations. We would kind of build a rapport. So I'd call Louis. I'd be like, hey, Louis, my name's Justin. I'm calling on behalf of the Ohio State University. How you doing? Blah, blah, blah. I see that you got your PhD here in psychology. What was it that made you decide to go into that? So you build a rapport with them. You butter them up a little bit. And then I'm like, so listen, Louis, a lot of the reason we're calling as well is we want to tell you that the College of Psychology is doing fantastic at the Ohio State University right now. We are ranked top 20 in the nation. And in fact, Louis, a lot of the reason that we're ranked so highly and we're doing so well is thanks to so many of our alumni that have given back. So truth be told, another part of the call today is we're hoping that you might be interested in also supporting the university with a very generous gift of $10 per month today towards the College of Psychology. How does that sound today? So I worked there for a long time. And after like 6 months of working there, I started getting really good at the job. Like I've always been like a really outgoing person, and I started getting a lot of donations, like more than a lot of my colleagues at the call center. And when I was in the darkest place, I didn't like have any confidence. Like I didn't have anything to take pride in. I didn't think I was good at anything because I wasn't like actively like getting closer to goals that were meaningful to me like I am now. But when I started working at the call center, I started really liking the job. I started looking forward to it because I started doing really well, and I was proving to myself that I am good at things, that there are good things about me to take pride in. And that was like that was like the ball starts rolling now. I have momentum. It's like once I reminded myself and remembered there are good things about me, I started pulling myself out of that dark place. And that was it was just like the catalyst for my life as it is now. And there's a lot between now and then, but the two things again that pulled me out of the darkest place I've ever been and hopefully never will go back to, being vulnerable and honest with loved ones. And reminding myself that there are good things about myself, remembering that I am worth love, I am worth a good life, and it's worth it for me to invest in my future. Like as far away as the vision I have for the perfect life is, like if I want to be a top melee commentator and like have a stream and be partnered and live off of esports, that is like maybe 2, 3, 5, 10 years away. But all that work will truly be worth it. You have to like truly believe that you are worth it. And that was kind of the start of it all for me. So that's a little bit about my story. And I hope that was productive or inspiring to some of the people watching it.
Oh yeah. You hit
Most
so many good
definitely
points.
Yeah, that was awesome, dude. Thank you for sharing.
People in this similar age demographic who are going to college the rest of their life are going exactly what you're going through, but with slight tweaks in their story. And thank you for sharing your story. I think one thing out, I mean, I thought about 10 different things, but one of the biggest things was, again, I want to highlight how you said opening up, but I also want to emphasize a very important piece to that, which is the people you mentioned. I'm sure you mentioned your friend and you mentioned your mom. Is that your friend and your mom did not solve your problems? They didn't go and take your debt away. They didn't go and make you a better commentator. They just listened, and you felt better. And I think that is what they offer. And I think people feel discouraged. The first I think reason I hear why I don't want to do that, and you've already mentioned it, is what can they do? When you said in your darkest place is like, well, I'm ashamed. What can they offer? What can they do that's going to make me feel better? And I think we think about it too much in the most tangible sense. We could have a long conversation about where does that come from. It could be just like American mentality. I don't know. Like, what can someone literally give me? But we don't place value in that. What they're giving me is that they're listening, and they are now sharing the burden of what I'm going through, and I don't feel alone. And the value of not feeling alone is so important and often goes understated. Now I am not just dealing with depression and suicide and hopelessness alone. Other people know about it, and they're in it together with me. It's a burden that is not just mine to carry alone. And by just people knowing and listening, I don't feel alone. And that is the hallmark, one of the hallmarks of depression, is feeling alone and hopeless. So the more we can do to pull ourselves out of that situation and just have people know and care and listen, we will feel better. But that journey from getting to there, it takes time and it's hard because you have to battle through the shame. You have to battle through the possible feelings of judgment. And that's hard, but once we get there, it paves the path towards feeling better.
I love that. I'm gonna add something if I may.
Please.
I think, I think my absolute favorite thing is just you guys mentioning the importance of just not being alone. I think something that was really difficult for me was, I guess, figuring out why I should even like make steps towards, that mindset, that mindset shift. I guess like I just couldn't bring myself to even understand or have the desire, like remote desire, to make any steps towards that. So something that worked for me, I don't know, again, different things for different people. But I found that I just had this absolute like avoidance to doing that, and so something else I tried was just like reverse engineering it. And I think through that I realized, because I think for a lot of people, like, they consider themselves a listener, right? Like a lot of their friends will come to them for things, and they'll just be the person that's like, I have an ear I can lend, right? But I think taking that and realizing that there's gravity in the fact that your friends are coming to you, and that there's significance in the fact that they trust you enough to share their traumas with you. Um, and and through realizing that, understanding that you're both worthy of, like, you know effort and grace and a better life from both yourself, but also that other people believe in the same things in you, uh, even though they might not explicitly say it, even though they might not affirm it every single day, with, like, everything that they do. um, them just being there and being willing to open up to you could also be a motivating factor. Like, they trust me enough to do this, they trust me, right? Just like focusing on, like, they trust me to not spill my secrets to the world, they trust me to just be there for them. Why can't I assume that they do the same for me? Why can't I assume that, you know, I can eventually be doing this for myself? Um, and like, it's very roundabout, and I think it's kind of weird, but I guess if someone wants to try something else, that's just, you know, another thing on the table, another addition to the menu.
I love that. One thing I'd love to add too is that, not everybody listening will have been to a super dark place in their life. And if that's the case, that's actually fantastic. That's what you hope. You don't want to go there. As much of a character building experience as it can be for people like Winston and myself. But so if you haven't dealt with this, you obviously you might in the future, but what I think would be very, very beneficial for the community, for everybody's community, is identify friends that you suspect are going through a difficult place and be there for them. And man, there were some people that I was just not responding to texts. I wasn't responding to calls for months. And there's one buddy of mine named Matt who would not take no for an answer. He just he never let up. He would always reach out to me on Facebook Messenger or call me or text me, even if I didn't respond, just to let me know that there was still somebody in my life that loved me, because he could tell that something wasn't wrong. He knows me. He knows that I close off when things aren't going well. And the bond that I have with friends he wasn't the only one, but the bond I have with people like him that tried to pierce through all of the the despair and hopelessness that this box I put myself in, having people like that can be the difference between me pushing through another day, deciding, all right, I'm not going to give up yet or not. So I think that you can tell. I think a lot of people can tell when people are going through things, but it can be an uncomfortable conversation to sit down with somebody and be like, hey, are you okay? Listen, you can talk to me. I'm here for you. I love you, man. I can tell, this seems off. You're not as energetic. Do you have anything that you want to get off your chest? You can always talk to me. Things like that can seriously be life-changing for people. And the bond that you will have with that person, if you have that conversation with them and you help them through a difficult time, you will make a lifelong friend. And you guys will both forever be grateful that one took place.
I think a lot of the times we don't know what to say to each other. One of the number one reasons is I don't want to bring up negativity, or I don't want that person to worry. What happens is asking somebody legitimately how they are doing, especially if you know that they're not doing well, you have removed but you have removed some of the difficulty and burden that they have been carrying and shame that they have been carrying with wanting to even disclose this. By you broaching the conversation, most of the time people feel like, oh, yeah, thanks for bringing it up, because it's hard for somebody to say, I'm not doing well, or I'm feeling suicidal, or I feel like my world is ending. But for you to kind of name that and put the words out there, now we're talking about it. And I care about you so much that I can feel it from you. And you don't even have to say it, but I'm going to put it out there just so we can talk about it. And when you are able to do that, it creates a whole new level of communication and friendship and intimacy. Now, I'm not saying that you as a friend have this heavy burden that you need to do, but if you're sitting there and you're wondering, how do I be a good friend? And I'm worried that if I say this, I say that, it's going to cause more damage. I think going in and just naming what you think somebody's feeling can more times than not help that person feel like, oh wow, like it's safe to talk about. But I think oftentimes everyone is just kind of doing this thing of, hey, you good? Yeah, I'm good. And then that person says, okay, and then we fist bump. And no one ever talks about it. No one ever talks about it because we're looking
Mhm.
for the out. And in that situation, we use close-ended questions too. We just say, you good? And it's a yes or a no, and then we say, yeah. Um, Maybe a more powerful question is naming the actions. Hey Zets, I know you haven't been answering the phone. What's going on?
Mhm.
It's not a yes or a no. It's
That's right. It's open-ended.
it's open-ended, and you're naming his behaviors. Like, I know you're not doing well because you haven't answered my calls. So you can't say, oh no, I haven't been doing that. And some people might be listening to this and say, well, that sounds confrontational, and that's the exact thing we tell ourselves, and we avoid conversation. And I'm not saying that it's not, it might lead to somebody taking it confrontationally, but the alternative is that we continue to operate in silence.
I agree. I mean, there's always going to be a risk that you try to approach a situation and they don't respond well to it. But you know, it's a small price to pay for possibly saving somebody's life.
Absolutely.
Winston, what are you thinking right now, man? I feel like we haven't heard from you in a while.
Sorry, I've just been busy listening. Honestly, I don't have too much to say. Like, I think you guys got it, like nail on the head. Whatever that saying is, like, it's worth being uncomfortable for 5 minutes, or even just like being wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Than, you know, being the big wrong.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. You know
Like,
what?
yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah. No, that was it. That was it. That's it.
Okay.
I
So
was gonna say something about what Louis said.
yeah, Juno, please.
Just because, what was indicating that you're like okay to talk about that stuff, to your friend is really important. Because then you also indicate like you're like prepared to talk about something heavy. So and then I really really liked what Louis said about reshaping like how you ask the question. Naming the action seemed really good. So I just wanted to say I appreciate you saying that.
I love that. I also I want to literally ask Louis for advice. You have a PhD, all right, and I want to talk to you a little bit about like a phenomena in my life that that I've experienced for years. And I want to know basically if this is something that is documented, if you have any advice. I think I'm dealing with it kind of well right now. We're going to get a little bit into like cycles of my life. Like if you look at somebody's life and like there's a graph, the y-axis up and down is how well you're doing, and you can it's like to every individual subjectively. So I can tell you how well I think I'm doing. Like up here is a 10, down here is 0, I'm suicidal. 5 is like I'm content but I'm not satisfied. I feel like everybody's life is kind of like a sine graph, right?
Mm.
But for me, like mine has always been like super variable. And what I've noticed is that ever since I ever dealt with a pretty significant bout of depression, is the cycle I've noticed in my life, and I'll talk about a couple things I've noticed about this, but basically, I have really high variance. So I'll be at a very, very, very dark place, and I'll be there for a while, and then I'll remember how to get out of it. And I've been there so many times now, I know kind of the ins and outs. I understand, like, basically what leads to this. I understand how to get myself out of it. But what happens to me is as I get further and further out of it and I get to a better and better place and things are going well, I get very complacent and overconfident. I think I've learned from my past mistakes. I think so. A lot of this, there's a lot of, for me in particular, psychological addiction that plays in this. I know that's not really like on the main topic, but I think it's very closely related to mental health. So I'll be candid about this. I've tried a few things. The only thing I've ever felt in any way addicted to, believe it or not, is weed. So for me, it's an all or nothing thing. If I smoke at all, I have to smoke all the time. And it often will lead to me going into this place. It destroys my conscientiousness, is what it does. It makes it more likely that other problems occur in my life. It's like I always have to be doing it. I'm more forgetful. I'm not working towards things. So ultimately, I go down here. But then I crawl out. I stop smoking. I'm eating. I'm sleeping better. I get to a better place. But then I get overconfident. I think, oh, I've learned from my past mistakes. Oh, it was all just in my head. I can surely smoke recreationally again because I'm smarter, I'm wiser, I'm more experienced than before. And inevitably, that's like the one pillar where if I start smoking, everything else I built goes away. Then I slip on going to the gym. I slip on eating right. My mentality gets a lot more negative. All of a sudden, I'm smoking every single day. I'm falling back into that psychological addiction, and all of a sudden, I'm back down here.
Hmm.
So the past couple of months, I've done a really good job of not smoking at all, and I've built on that, and I've built on sleeping better and working towards goals and stuff. But I just, for the past like 7-8 years, I've just been going back and forth these huge cycles of like doing really, really well, but then getting too overconfident. I slip. I let go of lessons that I feel like I've already learned 4, 5, 6 times. And then I feel like I have to relearn them by going all the way back down to zero. Is this something that you've ever experienced with a client? Or I guess, do you have any thoughts about this general pattern I've noticed in my life?
You're talking, and I want to understand a little bit of a concept that you described, because you said, did you say psychological addiction? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Parse that out a little bit more. What do you mean by that?
Yes. So I would basically distinguish it from a physiological addiction in that I don't feel like a physical need as like somebody who is an alcoholic would. Like they have like a physical sensation. I understand. I would imagine, because I've never been an alcoholic, but I imagine they literally have like a physical withdrawal where like they feel the need to have the alcohol, or else it's a physical sensation. It's kind of hard to pull apart the physical from the psychological, because you psychologically feel a physiological sensation. So they're all linked, but basically for smoking, I found myself, it's not physical, it's psychologically. I feel like I need to use it as a form of escapism. Like I feel very, very negative. I feel like I have no energy. I feel hopeless. I feel lethargic and apathetic. Yet if I smoke, sometimes it alleviates those issues. In a weird way, sometimes it makes them worse. Over a long period of time, it certainly makes them worse. But in the short term, it can give me life again. It can make me motivated to try to tackle my problems, to stop escaping them. But the irony is that I grow dependent on this thing that in the short run feels like it's helping, but in the long run, it's making things much, much worse. So I feel this like psychological need to be doing this thing, even though I know I shouldn't be. But it's like I have this pull to do it, because otherwise I'm in this very neurotic mental state of mind without it. Does that make sense?
Following you. The first thing I say is, what I say with a lot of things is, it's never one thing. It's usually like 10 things, and we try together to figure out how all of those things may or may not be related. And somewhere in all of those 10 things, we'll figure out what the issue is, because a lot of things come to mind. I think the first one is, it could be an association thing. It could be that when you were feeling down at one point, that the weed helped you felt better, helped you felt more relaxed, as weed does. And it became a marker for you of, after I do X behavior, in this case we're talking about weed, but insert any other behavior, after I get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, I am able to be more productive. So after I smoke weed, I'm able to be more productive. And a lot of times with substances, what we find is, you, after maybe a lot of use, I'm not saying you use a lot, but depending on the person, is you get the benefits of the substance, and then if you use it in excess or too much, then you actually start to experience more of the negative effects of a substance. So let's say caffeine. Caffeine helps us stay alert, okay? But if you use it in excess, more than you usually use it, then you start to experience more of the negative effects of caffeine: withdrawal, headaches, shakiness, tension, things like that. So it's possible that could be it too. So I described two things. So number one, it could have been association, that when I do this, it makes me, I associate that with being more productive or being more accomplished in my life. Could be that maybe I'm just experiencing the more negative effects of smoking, and maybe that's pertaining to my use. I don't know. That's up to you to decide. Let's see. And then there was another part I wanted to mention. I think our appraisal. So you described, you feel like you're in a cycle, or things start to go well and they go back down. Things start to go well, and you have to start from square one, right?
Right.
Okay. I would want to know more about the reality of whether that's actually happening, because I think we're our harshest critics, and I think we have a tendency to look at the negative and avoid the things that we are grateful for and the things that we're accomplishing. So I would, if we were talking more, I would push back on that idea, and I'd say, so let's understand. Let's look at the evidence, as I call it, that things really are doing this up and down, and let's evaluate it. And I think when you have that perspective of whether or not you are overstating the things that are not going well versus the things that are going well, I think it's because we can be our harshest critic. It's because we set maybe too higher standards for ourselves. It's because maybe we start to think life is supposed to suddenly be like this when that is not a realistic expectation. So it could be that too. I don't want to oversimplify your what you're going through, and I'd rather just give 4 things that could possibly be part of it, and there could be other things. But those are some of the things I usually think about when I talk to somebody who's maybe going through something similarly.
I appreciate that. I'd like to move the conversation in a more general direction so we can get Winston back involved as well. Earlier, you talked about 4 things you think are good kind of pillars or initial habits to kind of structure a lifestyle around. And those 4 things, if I recall correctly, are sleeping 8 to 9 hours a day, eating well, exercising, and getting an appropriate amount of social engagement. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I guess beyond that, of course, at some point it becomes subjective. It's like, if I want to be a commentator, then one of my lifestyle habits should be doing analysis X hours a day or something, right? But do you think that there's a 5th thing that everybody would be wise to add? Or what do you think is like the next tier? What are some good ideas that you would also encourage? And I guess also for Winston, if you want to chime in as well, what are some habits that you've established that you think have helped you accomplish your goals in photography?
That's an interesting question. A 5th goal.
Or 5th pillar. 5th pillar.
5th pillar. Yeah, sorry.
Sounds like a title of your new book, Louis.
Oh, are you gonna do a plug?
Yeah.
Plug the book real quick while we're at it. No, I'm kidding. I mean, I think obviously getting the fundamentals of just making sure your physical flesh machine is working can often be just like the biggest hurdle in terms of getting your like mental landscape in check. But I guess if we were to add something to it, I think it would just be identification of whatever it is that you just really want, regardless of I shouldn't say that. Whatever it is that you're really passionate about in the context of interests and hobbies and desires. So like, in Zet's case, commentating, melee, in my case, photography, or just making art, right? Figuring out what it is that you are willing to get up in the morning to do, what it is that you're willing to not necessarily like abandon everything else. I think there's this almost like obsession with like sacrificing everything for a single goal when like the reality is like you're gonna have to give up a lot if you're struggling with mental illness and trying to work towards a goal. But just figuring out like what it is that you really want to do, right? And just seeing what you can do and like doing your absolute damnedest to just somehow build that into your 4 pre-existing pillars, if that makes sense.
Real quick, GG Juno.
Thank you, GG. Also, thank you, Louis, for subbing earlier. I saw that.
Yeah, good shit to Louis. What was that? Is that 12 months? No, 18 months.
Yeah, 18 months.
ADHD Louis subscribing to twitch.tv/melee every day. Just like everybody at home in the chat should do, if possible. Throw them a prime. They do a lot for the Midwest Melee community. All right, that's enough.
Trying to be more consistent. Than
Yeah.
One really quick thing I want to say. I've been trying to say this I've been wanting to say this for a while. I haven't had a good moment. We're just gonna do it now. Louis, your curtain looks exactly like the dress that people can't decide what color it is. You guys see what I'm saying? It looks exactly like the one where it's like, is it gold or is it blue?
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. That's a throwback, right? That's like what, 2015, something like
If you guys are in the chat, type in the chat what color you think Louis' curtain is. We'll turn it back over to Louis.
I hate this so much.
Oh man. And then there was another thing that came out that was similar to that. Oh, it was the sound. What do you hear the person saying?
Oh yeah,
That came out
dude.
too.
And if
I
you
forgot
think
what that
about
was.
one, you can hear it. You think about the other one, you can hear
Yes,
that.
yes.
too.
It's like Yanni and Laurel, right?
Yes.
That was
Oh,
just a frequency thing, right?
I don't.
This is slowly becoming a meme review. A throwback meme review.
What else is
So-
mental illness but a meme?
I wouldn't say it's a meme. I wouldn't say it's a meme.
God, I shouldn't say that.
We're trying to avoid it becoming a meme.
Actually,
So-
while we're here, at Louis or anyone really, what do you guys think about commodification? Isn't the right word.
I don't even know what that word means.
Hmm?
I don't even know what
yeah,
that means.
no. So, it's
Modded
become-
controllers, I'm okay with them. What's wrong with
you know,
them?
it's becoming very popular for kids to, I guess, use specific language, specifically within the Gen Z demographic. Like a small inconvenience comes, like I want to kill myself, or like something
Right.
like that, right?
Right.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you think there is harm to it? Do you think that it's something that we should avoid?
God, that's such a good question. I've seen some really interesting Facebook posts like trying to answer this question, like why do millennials and Gen Z people always like joke about killing themselves? And then they list all these statistics about how terrible society is and how like we have mounting debt and can't buy houses and there's mass shoot, like all the worst possible interpretation of our society. I can't decide if it's actually healthy because it's destigmatizing real issues.
Mhm.
Like it's like, oh yeah, like there are actual reasons that would lead somebody to want to kill themselves, or if it's actually doing the opposite. I actually can't tell how I feel about it. Louis, do you have any thoughts?
So I think in general we should avoid using terminology if it's not really how you feel. But I think the second thing is I do think there is a misuse of certain words, and it's very important. And it's a touchy subject. Thank you for bringing this up, Winston. So let's take depression. I think people say maybe flippantly that I feel depressed, and it's very very important that we make a distinguish. We distinguish, excuse me, the difference between feeling sad and the difference between feeling depressed. And I'm not going to get into it right now. You can Google DSM-5 major depressive episode or major depressive or disorder, or even more educational and informative, legitimately, if you actually wanted to know this, is you can go and type in your Google search CESD scale, and you can take a scale that's been validated and is reliable and determined based on that scale. Again, only on the scale. You should still seek a professional's opinion on if you hit the markers of somebody who's depressed, because what it does is two things. Number one, it minimizes what somebody who's actually depressed is going through, and it also stigmatizes feeling sad. So sad in the most crude description, let's differentiate between sad and depressed. Depressed being on far end of the spectrum, and sad is something that people feel when they just feel upset about something. It's okay to feel upset about something. It's okay to feel bummed out if you lost an important game. It's okay to feel sad if somebody around you died, or if you ended a relationship, or if just something didn't work out. That's okay. And we should talk about that. We should say, man, I'm feeling pretty bummed out. Things didn't work out today, or I failed a test, or something didn't go well. But I think what happens is maybe people don't take us seriously unless we say we're depressed. And so what happens is I have to say I'm depressed for you to take me seriously,
Yeah.
because we're not making an effort enough to just say like, hey, and this is going all the way back to what we've been talking about, that I need to go to the extreme for people to listen to me, because I'm not used to just doing it in a more regular day-to-day conversation way. So that's why I think specifically talking about this difference between the use of the terms depression and sadness is especially important. Depression, using that word flippantly, minimizes those who are in fact depressed, who are seeing a therapist, who are taking medication because they have in a chemical imbalance and are thinking about suicide regularly and are feeling despair and hopelessness regularly. That is somebody who's depressed. Their life is, they feel terrible. They feel awful. Versus somebody who something didn't work out and they feel sad. That's valid too, but let's talk about it. But you're also not depressed.
Wow. I love that. I think that there is a very important distinction between being depressed, being sad. Um, I thought a bit about this question, and I think I'm starting to take a side here, because a moment ago I was like, I can't decide how I feel, and I'm not sure if I believe this, but I'm suspecting that I think that what a lot of people are doing when they joke about like wanting to kill themselves when they truly don't feel that way. And Louis made a good point, like you should always say exactly how you feel, use like accurate language. Is I think what they're doing is they're normalizing this. That could be one effect of this, and it might not be what they're intending to do, but I think that's what people are doing. Like some people on like Twitter and Instagram, they make depression a part of their brand. Like it's literally a part of their brand. Like it's in their bio. Like they constantly are tweeting about it, and it seems like it's kind of tongue in cheek, and you suspect that they're probably doing a bit better than they portray themselves. But I think it's not really a cry for help always from those people. It's them kind of it's humorous because it's relatable. It's like it's hopefully the case that they aren't actually feeling that way, but they're making light of a situation like that because they know that other people can relate to it. And it's a way to help other people realize, hey, I too have gone through something like this. Mm-hmm. So I suspect and I hope that this kind of normalization has had the effect of further destigmatizing depression and making people feel more comfortable talking about it. Maybe an unintended, slightly negative consequence is when people are kind of sad, they'll brand it as depression to get it taken more seriously. But I feel like that might be a small price to pay if when people are truly depressed, they feel a bit more comfortable being honest about that. What do you guys think about that?
I think I'm still okay. So I'm on the fence, but only for the reasons that might be specific to the people I'm talking to. So like I do agree that I think it's slightly concerning, possibly almost definitely dangerous that it is normalizing this mindset that like somehow everyone's depressed and that it's almost like not a big deal if someone hears it. But at the same time, I think there's this like weird kind of solidarity, I guess. And this like, let's see, I should tread carefully here. If you're with people that you know that you can really trust and they trust you and you guys have talked about this, like there's an understanding between you two, that you know you guys do struggle with depression and suicidal thoughts and things of that nature, right? You guys both understand the gravity of that, and you guys still use that language, engage in that language. I think it's like fine. I think it's only dangerous when like really young children that might not have a good grasp on it start being exposed to it, and I guess like when that happens, then I think I'm not quite for it, right? I think in that instance I'm against it, because they lose perspective of the seriousness of the topics at hand, because like they just don't understand, right? But I think for people that do understand, understanding that you do still have to make steps towards growth and recovery and healing. But like if making jokes is gonna help you, then like make the jokes, I guess. I don't know. But like you do still have to do stuff though. Like seize the day, take it easy, but you do still have to seize it.
To me, it seems like this whole wave of people making light of depression on social media, it could be a slightly unhealthy, possibly somewhat productive yet also counterproductive way of dealing with depression. So I think we can agree that there's kind of pros and cons to this. It's an interesting phenomena for sure. One thing I wanted to point out though is that one of the three things on the again, I'm going to use the term chopping block because I can't think of anything else to describe what is on the right side of everybody's screen, we haven't really talked a lot about managing stress. And I feel like this could be a good point in the discussion to kind of steer into the esports world and talk a little bit about mental health as it pertains to competition. I know that this is like a niche that Louis can probably talk about for hours, I'm sure. And I have a lot of experience here too. I guess, Louis, do you want to kind of give us a primer for that kind of topic and some things that you think are interesting in that world?
And here's the first thing I'll say. You said, hold out. It's you said, and here's what I want to say is I think, and it was at the beginning of our conversation where this is how you deal with stress. You have to have a good work-life balance. You have to have the pillars in place. How you deal with stress. I think what I hear a lot of the times, and this isn't a judgment on anyone, it's just the reality of the sooner we can realize this and place acceptance and responsibility of what is happening in our life, the sooner we can start to make changes that are positive in our life. And what I mean by that is, I'm stressed, and we look at this person's life and they say, I'm not sleeping, I eat poorly, I live a sedentary lifestyle, I don't exercise, and I don't talk to anybody. Okay, no wonder you're stressed, because you aren't eating healthy. From a purely biological standpoint, food is everything, and it makes you feel sluggish, it makes you feel energized. Sleep increases blood. If you don't have enough sleep, your blood pressure goes up and you feel more depressed throughout your day. If you're not talking with people about what stresses you out, then you feel more alone, and you feel more isolated. Same thing. Exercise, you're not releasing the stress, so you're not allowing more oxygen into your body. When we're stressed, from a purely biological standpoint, our heart starts to race a little bit more. Our blood vessels constrict because we're not the blood's not flowing freely into our body. We're not getting enough oxygen, and so we're just carrying around a level of tenseness. The way I describe stress, or you can interchangeably use the term anxiety, for people who don't quite understand, is this idea that, have you ever felt like right before you're about to take a test, stressed? Okay, everyone knows what that feels like. Or anything that you can insert where it was like, everyone kind of know what that's like. Or right before you're about to, let's think about esports. You're right before you're about to sit before top 8, right? You feel stressed. Now, describe what that feels like. Okay, heart racing, this, and you have thoughts racing. Now imagine you felt that way all the time. Okay, that is a high level of stress and anxiety that just tears at your physical well-being and your effect of your performance on esports or any activity you're trying to do. So maintaining the 4 pillars that we talked about, and we're sticking with this term of 4 pillars, I don't know, is so crucial. Before we even get to specific strategies of how to breathe and how to practice gratitude and how to practice meditation and how to deal with those things, we got to do these other things first. You can't just meditate and deep breathe and sleep 4 hours a night and do all these other things poorly. The other things need to be there too.
Wow. You're definitely right. We definitely talked about some things that relate to this for sure. I guess to not risk kind of rehashing some things we've already discussed, I suppose if somebody's got those pillars in place, I feel like I know somebody like this who, they're sleeping right, they're eating well, they're exercising enough, maybe not as much as they should, but they're exercising every now and then, and they have a decent social life. Yet whenever they're playing, they still feel a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and they feel like it's one of the major things detracting from their performance, from their potential to execute, to play the game the way that they know they can. I guess at that point, at that stage, what are some of the things that you would talk about at that point for that individual?
Let's start with one, and that's the very, I always say I don't want to oversimplify things, but in a way I like to simplify them because I think we think they're more difficult than they are, or we think that we're doing them, but we're not actually doing them right. So here's one, is breathing. We do it involuntarily and we take it for granted, but no one really knows how to breathe. Okay. The reason we don't know how to breathe is because we take it for granted. We're just playing and we're not thinking about it. But you need to take breathing and you need to take it in and think about it in a more active way. Okay. What I mean by that is simple things you can do that we can do right now is taking a deep breath, and not just taking a deep breath, but doing it in a very specific way. Sitting upright, shoulders back in your chair, comfortable, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. You're filling in your belly. You're not breathing through your chest because you're allowing more oxygen. And if you want to allow even more oxygen into your body, you can put your hands over your head. Why does that work? Because you're expanding your lungs. You can do it slowly above your head and exhale. Now, if you want to make it more focused, use a count to help you stay more focused on it. And why do we use the count? It's not something magical or fancy. All it is it helps you focus your attention towards your breathing and not on the next thing that's about to happen. Okay, so maybe it's I breathe in for 3, I hold it for 3, and I exhale on 3. So it's hold and I breathe out. And I breathe. And I breathe out. Why does breathing work? Okay, it helps with the mentality, but again, let's bring it back to the biological. Oxygen allows the blood in your allows your veins to not to go from constricting to I don't know what the terminology is. Not constrict. Your blood goes through your body more freely. Your heart starts to decrease, and now the physical sensations of what was making you nervous are just a little bit better. And isn't that interesting that for 4 or 5 deep breaths that will take you maybe 20 to 30 seconds will put you in a better state physically and then translate mentally because you're not reacting to your physical symptoms and will help you play just a little bit better. Just one. That's just one.
Okay, that's awesome. Winston, I guess you introduced yourself primarily as a photographer. Do you compete, even in anything, even anything besides Melee?
Yeah, so I think before I tried to join esports, I would play a lot of League of Legends. Unfortunately, the game is god awful. I still can't get away. So I used to play a lot of that. I think these days I just don't have time to play that much. But I'm actually trying to get into a Pokken tournament. Because Smash is cool, but I think what I really like is just I don't know. It's just Pokemon beating each other up. Also, real quick, dilation. Is that the word you're thinking of, Louis? Like blood vessels dilating?
Maybe. I'm not too familiar. I know my immediate reaction is your eyes dilating. I don't know. Maybe it applies to veins too. I don't know.
I don't know. That's just the words.
I guess with the beauty of the internet, I can Google it right now.
Does this guy even really have a PhD?
This guy's a fraud.
Yes, dilation, the action or condition of becoming or being made wider, larger, more.
There we go.
Cool.
There it is. SAT vocabulary.
What a contribution. What'd you get on that SAT, by the way?
Oh god. Dude, the SAT was actually a huge point of stress. Because my sister went and she raw dogged it and got a 2360. This was before they took out.
I've never heard anybody.
She was like, I don't need to take some class. Dude, she's insane. She's so smart. So she got that, and then I'm just like,
damn.
Yo, I don't want to take this class, but my parents made me. I think I barely got 1950 or something like that. All my friends were like, oh yeah, 2K plus easy. I'm just like, bro, I can't. But yeah, that's what I got on the SAT.
I'm a fraud. I never even took it. I only took the ACT, so we can't even do a one-to-one comparison.
Yo, that's what's up.
Yeah. Raw dogging the ACT or the SAT. That was some vivid imagery, Winston. Really appreciate that, my guy.
Yeah, of course. I love to be judicious with my words. So I love that. Sorry, what was the actual question? I think you had a point that you wanted to ask, and then I just threw this train right out of the station.
Well, Louis responded, and then you said, by the way, I think you were thinking of the word dilation.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Indeed.
I definitely agree with the breathing thing. I read this quote recently. I think it was Armada. Okay, I think IBDW or somebody was sharing a quote from Armada on Twitter, and the the paraphrased version of the quote is, you can either control your emotions or you can let them control you. And there have been times in my competitive career where I felt like I internalized this, even if I never explicitly thought of it that way, where I was able to keep myself calm. Even if something happened in the game that I wasn't happy with, I wouldn't let myself become very angry. I wouldn't like fixate on that. I would be able to move on almost immediately. And a lot of the way I would do that is by breathing. So I would just kind of meditate in between stocks, just breathe, try to like accept the here and now, accept, okay, that happened, get through like the 5 stages of grief as quickly as possible. Like, you know, be as upset as I want, be depressed, bargain with the world. But I mean, as a competitor, you have to be willing to accept what just happened as quickly as possible so you can deal with it. I think that's a good metaphor for life.
To that, because I also want to say that I probably have 4 more minutes and I have to go. Sorry, all.
Okay.
So nothing I want to add to that. It's I guess it's like another point in addition to the breathing, in addition to what you just said, is this idea of how we perceive, or the term I use is how do we appraise the experience of stress. So what I think is we experience. Let's break it apart a little bit. Stress, oftentimes people describe it as I'm feeling heart rate or what I feel in my body first, and it is equated to this idea that I'm not performing optimally, or if I'm stressed, I need to get rid of the stress. To get rid of stress is to not be human. Okay, that should not be your goal. Your goal is to deal with the stress in a more productive way. I like to use the metaphor of stress is like a wave in the ocean. You can't stop the waves from coming, but you get better at riding them or surfing them or whatever your metaphor wants to be. And so another thing I'll add to that is how you appraise the stress, because we think about the stress, which is usually feelings of physical sensations in our body, and it's a negative thing. But I think a lot of the times you feel stress because you want something. So let's take the gaming example. You are sitting there and you start to feel a certain way. You feel that way because you care, because you want to win, you want to succeed, and you want to perform your best. Now, isn't that what you want your mindset to be? Is you want to be alert, you want to care, you want to be ready and have that kind of fighter mentality. Now, if we can reshape how you feel about stress, instead of appraising it as something that is negative and as something that is hindering performance, and think about it in terms of, I feel this way because I care and I'm motivated to win, suddenly it's not so bad. But here's the thing, your physical symptoms haven't changed. It's just the way you think about it that has changed.
I agree. And one thing I've noticed in my competitive career is that a lot of those initial emotional responses to the stimuli of the game, like you said, they're unavoidable. You have to try to ride them. But a lot of the thoughts that you have in response to those emotions, it can be a very cyclical pattern where if you experience the initial negative emotion, like maybe you whiff a ledge dash, you SD, you can accept that and be like, okay, that's what I signed up for. I'm going to miss some of my ledge dashes, and you move on. Then you can avoid further negative emotion. What I've noticed is like the negative thoughts feed into more negative emotion, which make it more likely that you'll have more negative thoughts, but you can kind of break that cycle with your own thoughts. So like meditating and like actively practicing in your daily life, like negative thoughts are going to happen, but you can let them go. A metaphor I like a lot is negative thoughts can knock on your door. It's up to you whether you want to open the door and invite them in to have dinner with you. So if you let the negative thoughts like go freely and you don't give too much mental energy, you don't expend too much time fixating on them, you can move on to a more positive thought, a more productive thought. You whiffed your ledge dash. That's already happened. Like, you can be as mad at yourself as you want, but that's not going to change anything. It's not going to make it any more likely that you can bring the setback. But you can think, okay, I'm on the Angel Respawn platform. How can I use my invincibility to hit my opponent? So moving on and just not fixating on those negative thoughts, I think will minimize the stress because you're not going to be feeding into that negative feedback loop.
And here's the thing, people are going to hear that because I've heard this before and say, well, how do I do that? And here's the thing, I love using this example with esports is, did you learn how to ledge dash right away? No, you had to grind it out. All of these things we're talking about, you need to commit the same effort that you did with anything you do in life, in this context, esports, and you will get good at it. do not feel discouraged when it doesn't happen right away. I want to say one last thing before I go, because I was looking at chat and somebody mentioned DBT.
Right.
DBT stands for dialectical behavioral therapy. It is traditionally used for people who have very severe suicidal thoughts. We did talk about suicide. DBT is well researched and well established, and people should do it if it feels comfortable for them. Um, if you're really dealing with suicide, that's primarily what it's used for, and it's really effective. But if we do this again, we can talk about that. So thank you, Juna. Thank you, Zets. Thank you, Winston. Juna, I don't know how your speedrunning has gone. Did you break any records? I don't know.
Nah. This
Okay.
run right now is actually okay, but
Cool.
I was actually
Louis,
listening.
Louis, thank you so much. This has been a fascinating conversation. I appreciate your contributions. Can you give me like 1.5 more minutes? Because I just have one last question. I'd love
Go
to
ahead.
hear from you.
Okay.
And this could be a whole nother podcast, but can you give us like a 60 to 90 second response in regards to mental health for people that are trying to understand themselves better in their journey in life? In a general sense, what do you think about the use of psychedelics or any other kind of substance like that for somebody to learn more about themselves? Do you think that it can be helpful, or do you think it's too big of a risk?
You're gonna give me 90 seconds to answer.
We should just do another. We could just do another world record, bro. We could just do a whole one.
So I think
Too long didn't read me.
Yeah. That's a very complicated one. What do I safely want to say with the last 60 seconds here about psychedelics? I don't know. I think it's pretty inconsistent, the effect it has on people. That's the first thing I'll say. So if you are going to do it and you heard somebody else had a great experience, yeah, you just don't know if you're going to have a great experience. And some people have had great experiences. Yeah, I don't feel safe enough to leave you with anything more concrete than that. Sorry.
Understandable. I want to be totally frank too. The only reason I thought of this, and I know I'm gonna get called Joe Rogan right now, but I saw DBT. I couldn't not think of DMT, and that's how we got here.
Sure. Yeah. Joe Rogan's all about it.
That is.
All right, I'll talk to you guys another time. I'd love to do this again. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Louis.
Thank you so much, Louis.
So much fun.
Ooh, I have to
So
fix all
much
these.
fun.
Louis
Very cool.
is a mental coach at Metagame. Many from the Melee community would know him for doing Full Bloom, but yeah, he's doing mental coaching now, and he does have an actual PhD. So I was really glad that he was able to come on.
Yeah, it was an awesome opportunity to get to talk to him. He has like an actual practice, so I would encourage anybody in this chat, anybody that watches the VOD later, look into his services if you need some help. I mean, he clearly knows what he's talking about. He's very easy to talk to, and yeah, I mean, I could see myself hiring the man to help me, especially if I was in a darker place. I'm happy to report that I'm in a very good place in my life right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, really loving the chat. I think we've been going for almost 2 hours strong now, so I imagine that we'll probably cut this pretty soon. I feel like I have a few more things I could expand on. Winston, were there any things that you wanted to talk about going into this podcast we haven't yet touched on? Anything else that you feel you really want to share before we end this?
Ooh, I mean, I could talk as long as we need. I think Louis is gone, so we can't get the professional advice. But I think a quick tag on to the previous point of stress management, and like deep breaths, something like that, is so like I said, like I used to play League, right? And for like a really brief stint, I would play competitively, and I would notice like every time I would hop into like ranked or like whatever, or play in a tournament, like I just get really sweaty, and I just wouldn't be able to execute on like any of my mechanics. Like I'd practice so much at home, and like when the tournament would come, like I would just flop, right? And so I think in conjunction with doing the deep breaths and other the stress management techniques, I think something that's really good is just like putting yourself in that situation a lot, if that makes sense. Just like, you know, if you're scared about net play, right, just doing net play all day or as much as you can, right, so that eventually it doesn't become scary. It becomes just another thing that you can just do and engage yourself in, so that the next time you're playing in tournament, and you enter a similar situation, like I don't know, like last talk, best of 5, you're not sitting there kind of just like palm sweaty, arm spaghetti, brain ready to zoom on out. Like you're like, I've been here, I've been practicing. Like this isn't anything new to me. Like it's normalized. I think like that's something that's also really effective. Like I know people talk about like I gotta get in the lab, gotta grind it out a lot, but I think like specifically to esports, even more specifically to like games that you can really grind, like putting yourself in situations where you're stressed and eventually becoming not like desensitized to it, but becoming used to that level of pressure. So that when you're in tournament, when you're like at Genesis, you're not freaking out. Like you're used to it and you know how to manage it. Like you have the techniques, you know how to do your deep breaths. But also you're just used to playing that situation. I don't know. That's just what I think.
Honestly, I think desensitization is a great word to describe the phenomena of gradually exposing yourself to something that you fear and the process of getting over that fear. I have a really interesting story of a friend I helped through an irrational phobia that I'm pretty sure nobody in the chat will have had this very phobia, but I think that there are lessons that we can take from this, and it's an interesting story nonetheless. So, believe it or not, so like years ago when I was like in college, like I was like a freshman in college, I just broke up with my girlfriend at the time. We were like long distance. And the way my brain works, obviously we're all interested in psychology and philosophy. We're all here. I have like my degree is in philosophy and we're talking about mental health and psychology. So that's the way my brain works. I'm really interested in social dynamics. So I became interested in like why are girls attracted to some guys? Why are guys attracted to some girls? And I found certain communities on the internet, and there's some really shitty ones. But one of like the more vanilla ones I found that was pretty helpful to start was a Reddit community called r/seduction. Now
Amazing.
it's not perfect. I know that some people here have been there, and it's called Set It. It was like 2011.
You're
And
on thin ice, bud.
I know I'm on thin ice. I get it. It was so long ago. Don't cancel me. But listen, they talked about, okay, listen, if you're like a guy and you don't have a lot of skills and you don't have a lot of experience talking to girls, like you can't just go to a club and just approach like a million people. You can, but like it might not work. It might not be very productive. You might not be able to bring yourself to walk up to and talk to a bunch of girls. It might just be too much. You might not be that close. So maybe like just like at a coffee shop, ask a girl what time it is. Like start with that. And like that's still going to be scary, but maybe do that 100 times and eventually you can ask anybody, guy or girl, the time of the day, and it won't make you afraid. And you make that gradual progress. So that's where I learned about this idea of slowly and gradually exposing yourself to whatever it is that you fear. Well, a really, really good friend of mine, who's actually a fair bit older than me, I don't know how he developed this, but he developed this phobia of being in any situation where he wouldn't be able to go to the restroom for extended periods of time. So even like going to like Taco Bell down the street, I'm talking like 10 blocks, 3-minute drive, he has to go to the restroom before because he was deathly afraid of getting in the car and then realizing at that moment he really has to go to the bathroom and he can't. Like it was a huge phobia for him. And I think a lot of people have likely dealt with some sort of irrational phobia that they know isn't rooted in reason, but you still can't shake it. And a lot of the problems surrounding this were social in nature because he had this problem, but nobody in his life was taking it seriously. Everybody that he opened up to thought it was crazy. They thought that he was insane. They didn't take it seriously and they didn't support him. They mocked him and it only made him feel even more ashamed. And that's why I was so happy that he opened up to me about this eventually because he was just so candid and vulnerable with me. And there was a turning point for him because unlike everybody else he talked to, his family, a significant other of his, I actually took him seriously and I didn't make fun of him. I didn't make him feel like shit, but I helped him talk about what can we fucking do about it. And I was like, listen, man, I literally used this metaphor. I talked to him about like this like phenomenon of slowly pushing yourself out of your comfort zone to become more confident talking to women. And I was like, listen, man, right now, maybe you can't get on a plane without going to the restroom beforehand. But you know in your mind, you can get in the car, literally drive around the block and come back. And even though you're still going to be deathly afraid of it, that's like the smallest thing you could do to push yourself and prove to yourself that your fears are rational. You have to start somewhere. You have to start with a really small step. So get in the car, like drive around the cul-de-sac, and then go back into your driveway and prove to yourself that there's nothing to be afraid of. And that one conversation changed his life. Like, he talked to me a month later and he was completely over it. That's exactly what he did. He did that, and then he would drive to Taco Bell, and then he would drive to his girlfriend's house, and then he would drive to, he was, you know, we're from like one part of Ohio. He would drive to like the next city over, like an hour-long drive. So, like, just enter your locals. Like, get used to putting yourself in that situation where you're going to be up against somebody that's pushing you to your limit, where there's something at stake, where you want to make it to losers finals and you're in losers semis, or it's your demon and you've never taken a set off of this person. You just got to get yourself in that situation as many times as possible. It's always going to be valuable experience. Maybe you don't win that set, but it's going to be valuable experience. And even if you don't win that, it will make it more likely that you're going to have a better chance of winning the next set. So I definitely agree. Just gradually exposing yourself, it's going to, I think, desensitize you to the anxiety. You've been there before. And that's why, like, that's a thing we talk about. Like, you know, Lefton's been here in grand finals before, but, you know, Amsa, he's never been in grand finals of like a super major. You know, dear God, I hope we can see Amsa and Lefton in the super major someday. But that's why people say that. You've got to get that experience. And no matter how small the step it is, take that step today. You'll be glad you did it.
That was a good story.
Go. Sorry.
I was just saying that was
lots
a
to
good
take from
story.
that. I'm glad you enjoyed that, Juna. And Jamra in the chat, glad you enjoyed that as well. So many takeaways. Like, you have to be confident enough to be vulnerable with somebody that you care about. Those deepest, darkest things that you need to get over in your life, the things you need to attack, the things that you're trying to escape but you need to face head on in your life. You need somebody who will take you seriously and won't make fun of you. Like, I felt so fucking bad for my friend when I realized I was the only person that was willing to take him seriously and not make him feel even worse. Like, I could literally never ever fathom somebody opening up to me and spilling like the deepest, darkest part of their existence, the thing that they can't seem to shake, they can't get over it, and they're already ashamed enough of it, and making them feel even worse and not validating that person. That is just about the evilest thing you could do, in my opinion, to any human being. I was grossed out. I detest anybody who would ever do that. But I hope that everybody in the chat would have taken the route of validating that person, like, just expressing love towards that person and doing whatever you can to help that person. This is the kind of guy, you know, him and I, we don't talk every day. He lives kind of far from me, but he's the kind of friend that even if we go 6 months, even if we go a year without talking, whenever I do talk to him, we pick right off where we left off. We pick up where we left off, and we have a really, really strong, unbreakable bond because of what we've been through together. Reach out to people, help them through shit, forge those bonds. That kind of brotherhood or sisterhood, those are the bonds that make life worth living, that you're going to have that friendship for the rest of your and I'm just happy to have been able to share an experience with that good friend of mine and to have a bond that's that close. We all need those bonds. So, you know, if you're reaching out to somebody and helping them through a difficult experience, they're going to return the favor when you need them the most. And that's what friendship is all about.
That sounds like it's straight from a Pokemon movie, but I think you're right there. Like, there is value in investing in friendships, regardless of, I guess, the emotional. Well, actually, I guess I shouldn't say that. I was gonna say, like, there's value in investing regardless of emotional tolls, but I guess that's up to you to be judicious about who you're investing in and who you're, you know, really pouring your time and effort into. Because, like, if you find the right people, then it's definitely, you know, you can almost, what's the thing, like, you can bounce off of them, right? In terms of growth, like, it becomes almost easy to make the right choices towards, like, growth and progression. When you're with people that, you know, you can vibe with, that people that support you, and I would say almost more importantly that, like, you support, because I guess, like, if you don't really fuck with the people that fuck with you, then like it's hard to. There's this like weird reciprocation dynamic, you know. Um, I don't know. I didn't really have a specific direction I was trying to go with that, but that was just what I was thinking.
One thing I want to expand on, and I like the direction you're pulling us in. Where I want to go is, a lot of what you're saying comes down to the people you surround yourself in your life. That's critically important. People, you've all heard people say like you're the average of like the 5 people you hang out with the most. I think that's definitely true. But you don't want to surround yourself with people that you can't count on when you need them. You don't want to surround yourself around people that will make you feel worse when you're already down. That's like the worst thing you could possibly do for yourself. A good thing you can do is having people that will support you. The best thing you can do is have people that will be going along a journey with you. Like I said before, and if you guys are just joining us, I shared a story earlier about a good friend of mine named Evan, who helped me through the darkest, most difficult phase of my life, where I was probably suicidal. Let's just be honest about it. But again, we have an unbreakable bond now because of that, and I've helped him through some tough times. And I think of us as going through this journey together. We're constantly in communication about our goals, and we're cheering each other on, and we're like sharing our progress, and we're talking and strategizing with one another. That's the best possible thing you can do. You want to have brothers and sisters on your journey that have a similar goal, a similar vision. Like as a creative, as somebody who loves commentary and making music and competing and making content, I'm trying to find other individuals that I feel are passionate about those things, that are also very talented and that are serious about it and willing to grind. I want to surround myself with those people so I can learn from them and they can learn from me. So I think that's like one of like the later steps. Like we've talked a lot about the building blocks of pulling yourself out of depression, getting the pillars of your life in place, eating right, sleeping right, making sure that you're exercising, making sure that you are socializing enough, have goals. But I think once you have a lot of momentum, and that's what I'm working on now, is networking to surround yourself with people that you think are going in the direction that you want to go with. And I think that's really huge.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Vibe with that.
That's right, Cotton. Well, we're past the 2-hour mark now, I believe.
Sure are.
So Juna,
Yeah.
we've done a lot of talking here, and you've done a lot of playing. I guess get us up to speed on the run so far. How's the run going? What's been going well? What are some things that haven't been going so well?
Well, it's been interesting because like I'm running, but I'm also like trying to manage the stream at the same time. So this run started off pretty well, but I think let's see, I went to fix the cameras and stuff because once Louis
Right.
dropped the call, that got messed up, and I'm still kind of learning how to navigate my role in the podcast too. I know somebody, Legacy, was asking like, what's my role in this right now? But which is why I'm also glad to have you kind of like take on this host role, even though it wasn't planned at first. But it's really
Dude, he's doing great.
A1.
A1.
Thanks, guys.
But yeah, I'm still trying to learn how to run this podcast. But I've learned a lot so far during the run. I was I wanted to comment on so many things during like the beginning, but I'm enjoying doing this so far because I'm learning a lot too, and I've learned a lot about you guys too. So
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. I mean, you've been talking about how you wanted to do things like this for so long, and I'm really glad that we finally did it. We started this this first episode, and I think it went really well.
yeah,
It was a really fascinating conversation, and I'm honored to have been able to have this conversation with guests as awesome, experienced, and articulate as Louis and Winston here. And the cool thing, Juna, is you can be as involved with these conversations as you want. Multitasking on that level where you're playing a video game and managing a stream and actively engaging. If anybody could do it, it's going to be you. But that's the cool thing, is where you can kind of be as involved as you want. But I guess did you have anything that you wanted to add? I mean, we had a pretty consistent conversation, so there weren't a lot of lulls where you would have had to add things. But did you have any stories or anecdotes that you wanted to share that were relevant?
There were so many things. It's hard for me to go back now and think about it, but there were so many things that resonated with me. that each of you guys were saying. But I really liked the tips that Louis gave too, with like the breathing, but especially just like not putting yourself in this position where you are isolating, or you're like creating this loneliness for yourself. A lot of that, what you guys were talking about there, was resonating with me. There's so many things too that like, we could definitely continue this conversation in another episode too, or like branch off. But yeah, I'm also really grateful that you guys shared your stories too. I thought that was really important, and some people in the chat mentioned too, like someone mentioned like they really are glad they were able to hear this. There's some people who just said that they related to what you guys were talking about, and I think I think that's all I could ask for, putting this podcast together, this like show together, is like somebody gets something out of it, and you guys are able to like share your perspectives too. Like I don't know how many times or how often or how many people you've told like these stories before, but really glad you guys could share those.
As am I, Juna. And it seems like we're kind of nearing the end. So one thing I want to say is clearly we're all very passionate about it, given that we blocked off this time. I mean, I just love talking. I mean, I'm a freaking commentator, so that's pretty obvious, I think. But especially topics like this, I've had essentially podcasts of this nature on the way home from Smash tournaments, where I'll talk with buddies about, you know, like I shared a story about my like psychological addiction to marijuana. We would talk about like escapism and like avoiding your problems and using weed or other substances in that way for 2 hours. So this is a thing that I'm very passionate about. And if anybody in the chat, if things resonated with you, if you don't have somebody that you feel like you can talk to, I talk with people that I meet on social media about this stuff sometimes, for sure. So you know, my DMs are open. If you really feel like you have nobody else to reach out to, it would be an honor and a privilege to be even somebody that you feel like you can reach out to at all, just to like start exploring these things or open up to. But there's any way that I can be helpful to people, because you know, I'm 26. I'm probably not that much older than a lot of you, but I'm probably older than some of you guys in chat. And I'm in a position where I've gone through a lot of the things that I think many of you guys are going through or have gone through. And I've come out the other side, I think, a better person. And it's honestly wild thinking back a couple years ago, being able to say this now. It blows my mind how far I really feel like I've come. But this is, for me, a way to try to give back. So I really do hope that people got something out of this. I hope you guys were entertained by this. And I think that's all I've got. Winston, what do you have to say to the folks back at home before we conclude here?
Mom, Dad, I'm on TV. No, I'm kidding. I guess for the people that did show up, whether or not you were expecting this, glad you showed up. For the people that stayed, I'm even more glad that you stayed. I think if you have friends or you yourself are going through something of this nature, I think it's important that you do your best to just maintain perspective on things. I know it can be really hard, but I think maintaining perspective. Sorry, our friend just texted me something really fucking stupid. Maintaining perspective and just like making sure that you remind yourself on a semi-regular basis, and if you can, like, find someone that will do it for you, that like what you're feeling today or like this week isn't going to be the end of your life. Like, you'll get through it one way or another. And that, like, not to be like cheesy and like, oh, it gets better, like it might take a really freaking long time.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, like, it'll be fine. Like, you don't need to stress out about getting better, if that makes sense. Like, as long as you loosely wade in the right direction in the pool, like, you'll get there. It's fine. Like, don't freak out.
I
Also, shout out to Zach Fox and Kenny Beats for putting out the best banger of 2019. Jesus is the one. I got depression. Look it up on Spotify.
I haven't heard this. I just saw the song title on Twitter. I thought it was hilarious.
No, you
Um,
watch the cave, watch the episode. It's incredible. It's not like productive, but it's it's good content. It's good.
Speaking of plugs, where can everyone reach you guys? And
That's a
what
good
what
question.
and what you're working on too?
Sure.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
There you go, Louis.
'Cause
Or
I
not
know.
Louis.
Sorry.
Wow, Zed. Sorry, my bad. You wanna go?
I feel like I've gone first a lot. Why don't you take this one?
Okay, yeah, sure. You can find me on Twitter at JoePhoto. I think it's right there. It is right there. Wow, would you look at that? You can find me on Instagram at DojoPhoto. I will throw this link down there.
Yeah.
I just put out a book a few months ago that I'm really still riding
Oh,
that
yeah.
high of. It's called Second Generation Plates. It's a photo book with recipes, so it's like a photo book cookbook, right? Um, but you know, there are fun pictures in there. If you're interested in immigrant cuisine, check it out. You don't have to buy it, but check it out if you want. But those are my plugs.
That is so cool. That's
Yeah.
wild, man.
I saw that. I saw some of the book or a preview of it. The photos were really good. And the
Thank you,
design
thank you.
too. The design.
Okay. Before I shill too hard for myself, I want to shill for Louis again real quick. I'm
Yes,
just gonna
please.
copy this link. I'm gonna paste it. Again, I said a moment ago, I'm more than happy to accept any DMs, and my services are free. If you want professional help from somebody that has a PhD, again, I don't think I really need to shill for Louis too hard because I think he proved that he's an incredible resource for anybody just through this discussion. He's so smart and he's very passionate and dedicated about these things. So that is a link to his website, metagamelouis.com. That I just posted in the chat. Just check it out. Get in touch with him if you're interested. I think that that's the kind of move that might change your life. Just like seeing a psychologist years ago changed my life. Two last takeaways, and then I'll shill for myself. I agree with Winston in that it can get better. But the two main things, there's one more thing I think needs to go along with that. I like to say that it can get better because you have to accept that there's going to be a lot of work associated with that. So just saying it will get better, maybe that works for some people. For me, I need to take on that responsibility of it can get better, but I need to work hard. The second thing that goes along with that for me, that's a big takeaway, is it's worth it. You are worth it. You have something inside you that is meaningful and important. You have something that you could give back to the world that would make the world glad that you were put here. And everybody has that about themselves. You're good at something. You could be the best at something in the world if you dedicate yourself to it. I really believe that about you, and I believe that about myself. So you need to have some sort of passion or vision. Imagine what is the best possible life you could live, and you need to strive towards that. And if you can convince yourself that you deserve that you are worth the life that you want to live, then working towards it feels a lot easier. You have to convince yourself that all the work that would be required is justified because you deserve the fruits of your labor. So last thing about me, again, I've been Zets. You can find me on Twitter at ZetsBro. I've had quite a wild ride for the past 6 months. I commentated at Smash and Splash. It changed my life. I've been working really, really, really hard since then to make it so that Smash and Splash would not be the best weekend of my life, because it was. Smash and Splash 5 was the best weekend of my life. It was amazing. I had a great time commentating and competing. I've been trying to grind so that I will have other best weekends of my life in the future. And I'm proud to tell you guys, I'm going to be commentating at Shine in just a couple weekends near Boston in Massachusetts. I'm actually on the schedule at a major tournament for the first time in my life.
Yes. Let's go,
Let's
dude.
go.
That's the fucking success story. Again, like 4 or 5 years ago, I was literally suicidal. I had no direction. I did it. You can do it too. So see me on the mic at Shine. I'm gonna start streaming again a lot. I've been streaming a lot, but like I just finished moving, which is why you can see my bed with no like actual sheets or anything on it in the background. But you can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Zets, ZETTS. And I also have a YouTube. But yeah, I make videos. I made a video on Dreffin's run at Smash and Splash. It was pretty cool. I'll link that, and then the shilling will finally be done. But yeah, guys, I'm trying to become a really good Melee commentator, and I'm making a lot of progress. So if you haven't seen my work, tune in to Shine, and you guys can let me know what you think. I'm open to feedback, and I hope that you guys enjoy that as much as hopefully you've enjoyed this podcast. So Judah, do you have anything else that you'd like to say, and/or are you gonna keep streaming? Are we gonna just drop off, or is that gonna kind of be?
I might keep streaming after I take a break. But yeah, I just want to say thank you to you three, Louis as well, for coming on, talking about mental health too. Pretty heavy topic. Not easy to talk about and be vulnerable about it too. But I got a lot out of hearing your guys' stories and hearing like specific examples. Like you just gave really good general advice, Zets, but like I can link back to many things of your story that helped me realize why you reached that point about the advice that you're giving. So definitely, if you missed the first half, like the first section, I've been recording this whole podcast. I'm gonna upload it to YouTube. Definitely check it out. I'll be doing that with all the episodes. But yeah,
Awesome.
thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who was watching too. The chat was really well behaved too. I was a little concerned about that, but I think we all had like a really productive stream and podcast. Thank you guys.
Good stuff.
As do I. Well, thank you guys so much. Last thing I'll say, very last shill, is this video I made has 998 views. And two of you guys, just click the link. Let's just get it to
Click
1K.
it right now.
My goal was to get it to 1K. We're so close.
Yeah.
But this was so fun. I really hope I can be on for another podcast sometime. But,
Oh please.
I think we did the first episode of hopefully an awesome and growing series, Some Justice. But thank you guys so much. I guess we'll sign off.
Yeah. All right.
All right, we out, I guess, right?
Peace out, guys.
Yep, I'll drop off now. Thanks again, Juna, for giving us this opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Oh, that's me. All right.
All right. Take it easy, Winston. All right. I am going to take a break. Switch my titles, but yeah, please check out these guys and their work. Like it was really great to have their perspectives, but they also each like create great work in the community. So check those Twitters, those websites out. Especially Louis and Metagame. I know that's like a new venture he took on. He's the mental coach, but he also created it. So this was like the first time I also heard him talking about this topic so much, and he definitely had some good perspective and advice. And yeah, Dude in Frames, thank you for the raid. Actually, let me do that. Let me address all the notifications that came up earlier during the podcast. I was trying to figure out how to navigate that during the stream too, because like I didn't want to like interrupt what people were saying to like address them. They showed up on the screen, which is good. I also turned off my split sounds because I realized those can be distracting. So I'm still learning how to do this podcast. That was the first episode. It was a really good one. Really glad I mentioned the concept for this show like months ago, and I delayed a bit on making it happen, but I'm glad it finally has actually happened. And it was really good. I learned a lot from hearing these guys talk. Yeah, I think you handle it really well. You kind of like paused for a moment and thanked Dean Frames for rating and Louis for subbing earlier. But yeah, I guess pausing and taking a moment to thank those people wouldn't be too hard. I was really lucky to have Zets kind of take this hosting role, because I'm not sure how I would have done it, and also like I might be more or less involved in future episodes too, depending on what the topic is or who the guests are. So, but I think that first one went really well, and the dynamic was really good. Let's see. Missed used 5 bits. Dude in Frames rated with a party of 38. PhD Louis resubbed the podcast for 18 months. This has been a long time supporter. I've worked with Louis for like at least 3 years now. Really great guy to work with. Yeah, that's sick you were at Evo, Dude in Frames. And you actually play like a bunch of fighting games too. It must have been pretty sick. Is it your first Evo? Or have you been before? And what were you streaming? It was well paced. No one talked over each other. It was the flow. I was really happy with how the flow went. And each person got like a lot of time to talk too. Yeah, I'm still experimenting with the length of the show. Because different guests have different amount of time available, different people. I'm pretty much open to letting people talk as much as they want about this topic. But yeah, I have this stream, and I just want to use it as a platform for all these great people that I know to like voice their opinions, voice their perspectives. I working behind the scenes, I meet so many great people that don't really have a lot of visibility necessarily, or you don't necessarily hear their stories or perspectives. So it was really cool to have that this time. Yeah, I mean, it was like a test drive, right? I'm sure next time you do this, which I hope, I'd love to have you on as much as you're willing to talk about stuff. You'll get better at navigating that too, and I will too. Because I usually was like, I ran Save Melee, but I was never like really involved with the show on the front side, just behind the scenes. But yeah, I'm gonna upload that recording. Let me make sure I mark that too. Make a stream marker. You went as a spectator last year, Dude in Frames, competed in DBFZ Ultimate. Went 1 and 2 and 2. And hey, not going 0 and 2 at Evo. That's pretty nice. Yeah, I feel like Evo is like perfect for you. You play Smash, but also these bigger fighting games. Yeah, that's true, Zets. I think there are definitely parts that could be clipped. Yeah, Zets, we could definitely talk about it. I'm definitely open to ideas. I just, I have this big stream. I want to be able to use it more. So this podcast seems like one good way. So I'm definitely open to ideas on how to execute it. Well, I advertise the topics ahead of time. Yeah. I try to advertise it on Twitter, promote it on Twitter and social media a bit, but I'm pretty new to running one of these, so will I be clipping the audio for podcast? Yeah, maybe if someone can show me how to do that, or I guess I like do a little research. I didn't really consider actually uploading it to like actual podcast format. Yeah, that's actually what I did. The couple days before the podcast, I had this. Yeah, that's actually what I had. I was streaming with this overlay, the last couple days leading up. So I was doing that. I think it was really important to have like the first episode. I think now that we have the first episode down, I can really go in on getting people to sign up for more times and topics. It'll be easier to get episodes put together. It'll be easier to promote it too, because I actually have something to show in one episode to show. So it was I was definitely planning to do a lot more once I get this first episode down. So really glad you guys were able to do it, put on a good show. But yeah, I will definitely like mention the topics ahead of time. Do you think it'd be worth it to upload it to podcasts? I don't know anyone who actually uses podcasts. I will upload it to YouTube, but any other platforms that people think would be good, I'm open to. If I ever want to do an episode about wacky physics stuff, hit me up. Yeah, I'm pretty open to the topics and the guests. Like, we were really lucky this time. Like, Louis actually has a PhD, so we kind of had like some authoritative opinion as well as like people sharing stories. But that doesn't have. You don't have to be an expert to come on to the show. It's really just if you want to talk about something with other people, I want to bring people together to be able to talk about that on the stream. Yeah, I think YouTube will be good for sure. You hope your bachelors can cut it. Yeah, I think it'll be fine. I gotta find other people who want. If so, like what I've been telling people is like I'm open to have like I'm pretty open to topics for the show, and as long as you can find 2 or 3 people, like at least 2 people, or at least one other person to talk about something on stream with people, like I'm welcome to have them on. Yeah, if you just like talking about it, if you just want to talk about it, it really works best when the people actually want to talk about the topics that are being raised on the stream. Because like as you can see, like I'm pretty uninvolved in the conversation. I'm not necessarily trying to moderate or like what do you call it? I'm not trying to draw people toward certain topics, just whatever the people on the stream want to talk about. But yeah, if we can find other people to talk about wacky physics stuff, we could definitely do it. I do most of the discussion. I like do most of the planning on it on Twitter. Like I promote it a lot on Twitter. I promote it the most on Twitter. Any updates are usually on Twitter. Like me coming up with the idea for the show, having people sign up for topics, that all happen on Twitter. So that's really the best place to get connected. And actually make that happen. I could always pick a topic to get more involved with and have Bro StreamNet play instead. Yeah, I was also like, I have the idea of having like guest runners too. It doesn't necessarily have to be me playing, but I think this idea of like gameplay with like podcast is what I want to like keep working with. Yeah, someone like Cheese or like really any other runners like that would be cool. Have Lud run. Imagine Lud running. Yeah, Richard Sage. Imagine Lud running with this conversation going on. You have work in the morning, so you're gonna bed. Oh yeah, thanks for dropping by, Rezi. Also, didn't you like... I checked the Ocarina leaderboards recently, and I feel like I saw that you had a new PB recently. But yeah, good to see you around. Good luck with work. Yeah, I also, just from like an artistic perspective, I like this juxtaposition of like this very goofy Mario game over like this, or more under this conversation. That's like a pretty heavy topic. I really liked. But yeah, I figured it's also unique. What other podcast has speedrunning over mental health. Yeah, and it's not necessarily like heavy topics either. It was just happened that just happened to be the first one people wanted to talk about. Oh, it was a couple months ago. You got 1818. Yeah, I think I noticed it because it was like 1 second over my time. But yeah, take it easy. Yeah, that's what I'm worried about, Joe. I don't. I kind of want it to be like a jump off point or like a lab, like a place, a space that people can experiment. Like maybe they're like thinking about doing a podcast for themselves and they could try out their idea on here. Like I'm definitely open to that kind of thing. Yeah, I was really lucky that these guys were down to talk about mental health. It's a topic I care about too. A lot of what the guys were talking about resonated with me. But it also can be taught like anything. Like, let me open up this document just to see what topics people have already come to me with. Because I have a doc where I've been keeping track of topics. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, I'm glad you guys enjoyed the mental health episode. Glad you could catch some bits, Legacy. But yeah, Joe, if you ever want to just come on and talk about something, just people want to vent about something, like, and I'm open to doing this as frequently as I can have guests too. A filler. Yeah, if you guys want to talk basketball, like if you want to get RDT on, you guys talk basketball, that could be a thing. Yeah, getting the right people together. Like, I think this is one of my, I don't know if I can call it a talent, but it's something I like to do is bring, because I meet and I work with a lot of people. And I'm connected with a lot of people from different backgrounds, so I really like being able to bring these people together. Kind of like DJ Khaled. What does DJ Khaled do? He's actually just really good at like bringing the right people together. I need to come up with a better example though. Besides DJ Khaled. Plevo, thank you for the Twitch Prime, dude. Hope you're doing well, man. Pleba's Twitch. I mean, Chic. Why did I say Twitch? Pleba's Chic on the come up. Welcome to the Nut Hut, Pleba. Hope you're doing well. DJ Khaled is the Juna of music. Sup, Ashlyn? Oh, got a little sub train going. Thank you, Ashlyn. For 1 year! 1 year! Ashlyn has completed the journey to Golden Webs. Wowie. Thank you. Welcome back to the Nut Hut. The Low Michaels? I don't even know. Wowie. Here, let me show you just some of the, oh, this is the wrong window. Hold on. Some of the topics that we have in this document. Smash commentary, which is, that's an Autoron, will probably come on sometime. Fast food, superheroes. We just did mental health. Winston's a little note here. I feel like we will probably have another mental health episode because there were a lot of people that wanted to talk about this and like different facets of it, and it's a really big topic too. So if anyone was like listening and they had something they wanted to chime in with or add, we could definitely revisit topics that have already happened. Let's see, we have sports, Video games, obviously. Exercise. Look at Louis, all these topics he came up with that he's down to talk about. Pan and Coic from Aaron and Nick. Watch for Rolling Rocks. Kanye West. Coding. Production. Stream. Behind the scenes on the stream. That's probably what the next episode is going to be. With some folks from Endgame TV. And Nikki, who's been doing a lot of our streams lately. Let's see, puns, photography, which Winston obviously can talk about. I actually could talk about photography too. What I wanted to talk about a little bit more about the photo stuff that Winston mentioned, especially when he was like working with other people and hearing their stories. But that could be a topic for another time. People watching, something I used to do a lot when I lived in the city. So only tournament streams. Wait, what? Why anime is better than live action? Yeah, we could do it. We definitely could. Yeah, cause I don't know if you know, Winston, but I used to do a lot of photography too, wedding photography too. But though I work mostly fashion and like product. Yeah, that is so swank of him. SpongeBob with Avian. Yamin. I had lunch with Yamin the other day because he's moving. It was good to catch up with him. Yeah, I have some iPhone stuff on Instagram. I'm like kind of ashamed of my Instagram. It's like kind of get you on that SpongeBob topic. Arcadians, bracket formats, natural gameplay. I don't know what that is. That's Sarah News topic. Science talk. Oh, I actually didn't see that Trippy put this. But yeah, I'm gonna repost this tweet, or in a tweet, I'll repost this, and more people can add stuff. You did fashion and product for a while, and you hated it. You love the work, but hate the people it brings. Oh man, yeah. I definitely understand what you mean. There's a lot of vanity. I actually did a lot of fashion work before getting more into fine art, and I had to like really flip my perspective on like my standards of beauty. Like I brought in my fashion work in an art class one time, and I got called out for like picking only like really pretty models. I would only work with like I guess I didn't really even think about it, but they were like, "Oh, you work with really traditionally pretty beautiful models, and like you should challenge yourself to rethink your philosophy on aesthetics and beauty and vanity." And I was like, "Ah, shit, yeah, you're right." And I like did a complete 180. Started doing performance art, which is like complete opposite of commercial. Yeah, that really do be some SAC mofos, dude. Yeah, here, let me link it right now. I'll actually make a command. Adcom. No Arcadian Flame allowed. Thanks, Avian. Yeah, it actually led me to do a project where I photographed like what was traditionally thought of as blemishes and like scars, like blemishes, like whatever the person considered themselves to be blemishes on themselves. And it was like a big, and then I like enlarged it, and it was like a mural of like imperfections. My Gmail picture? What is my oh. Um. Yeah. It's like the business fish. This is what this is my LinkedIn profile picture. This is my face I put on LinkedIn. That's my LinkedIn face. Yeah, you guys, please feel free. Also what helps is I haven't really asked people to do this yet, but the hardest part of making these happen is finding a time, days and times that work with the guests. So if you can give any indication, that kind of helps too. My general general availability. You still remember sleeping under the family portrait of my entire family in the traditional? Oh my god. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, hardly anyone has seen that picture that you're talking about. That reminds me of the Wall of Great Men. Wall of... Hold on. It's like... Let me see if I could find it. Can we get a photo, though? Oh, I don't have a picture of the one that... that, Avian's talking about. Let me get another picture, though. Damn, really? Tumblr, oh my god, dude. I used to post my photos on Tumblr. And also have a Tumblr myself. What am I looking for here? Turn off the headlights on my steering wheel. Yeah, dude, it's cause my brother would leave the lights on. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Here, this picture is what I'm talking about. I love this arrangement. But his parents